Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 308 Topuria versus Holloway. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. Back with me once again, as usual, after a week away, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, we missed you while you were up in the Great White North. It's good to have you back. How you doing?
The real question is what was the bigger comeback this week in MMA? Is it return of Francis Ngannou, or is it a return of Keith Shillan? What's the bigger news story?
Oh, I think the bigger news story is you coming back. I mean, if you're asking me who I would rather take 7 or 8 unblocked, ground and pound punches to the head from, you or Francis, I'd have to think about it for a minute. But in terms of what's the bigger MMA story, the return of Keith Shillan, absolutely, from his self-imposed exile north of the border.
Yeah, if you take 7 or 8 shots from Ngannou, you don't have to worry about thinking anymore.
Oh my goodness.
How you doing, man?
I've been doing good. I obviously, it was an all hands on deck weekend this past weekend with the PFL's huge event going on, and then a interesting UFC Vegas 99. But something I reflected on, and I said on Twitter, back in the 90s, when I was like a kid, teenager, young adult, I had some friends who, after a Tyson fight, they'd be like, dude, I boxed Mike Tyson for, $2 million or $2.5 million or whatever his latest victim made. Sure. And sometimes I'd go along with it. Other times I'd be like, hell no, dude, there is no amount of money for which I would take the ground shots that Renan Ferreira took from Francis Ngannou. Just face down, Ngannou punching you behind the ear 7 or 8 times. There's no amount of money. Yeah, if you box Tyson, at least he supposedly has to stop when you fall down. If you're on the ground in an MMA fight and Francis Ngannou is feeling froggy, he doesn't have to stop until the ref decides that you're ready for a closed casket funeral. It was nice to be reminded what a terrifying dude, and at the same time, what a sweet and awesome dude Francis Ngannou is.
I haven't got to watch it yet, so I was at a wedding, so I didn't get to watch it.
Spoiler, he shit kicked Farid. I mean, I'm sure at least that much of it got to you.
Yeah, I checked the results. I used to when I was away for a weekend, I try to stay off from finding out the results, and it's it never works. I remember one time I went camping, and it was when DC won the title against Stipe. I actually ordered the pay-per-view and recorded it, everything, and then I went home. And when I hit play on the recording, for some reason, it didn't start in the very beginning. Oh. I went the whole weekend without phone off, leave me alone. Everyone knew my family would get home. I'm going right to the TV. Don't talk to me. I'm not turning my phone on yet. And as soon as I went play, it was DC holding the title. What the hell? And then I go back and watch it and try to pretend to be surprised.
Still a great fight to watch, but yeah, to go to all that effort to not get it spoiled and then be betrayed by your own devices at home. Well, enough about sadness in the past. Let's talk about happiness in the future. UFC is back at Yas Island in Abu Dhabi this Saturday. 14 fight card. Obviously, it will remain to be seen what it delivers in the cage, but this has at least got to be in the conversation for the best cards of the year. This is easily the best card of the year that didn't have 2 title fights on it. The
main event is so spectacular that alone gives it an A- for me.
Yeah.
If you give me one more title fight, it'd be an A.
Yeah. But, I mean, south of that, Whitaker versus Chimaev is a sensational co-main event for me. And obviously, anytime...
I'm trying not to get too excited for that one because I still think there's a very good chance that fight doesn't happen.
You're thinking that Chimaev shows up, weighs in at 204 pounds, and somehow Danny Ige ends up fighting him, and it ends up being like Lerone Murphy versus Robert Whitaker and Danny Ige versus Chimaev. I'm
Danny is such a badass. He's such a badass. He probably would fight 2 guys in the same night. And then Holloway would be pissed off that somehow it wasn't him doing it.
Yeah. Obviously, anytime the UFC is in Abu Dhabi, we get a card stacked with fighters that have trouble getting visas to fight in North America or Western Europe. By my count, there are 6 or 7 fighters on this card that have been in the UFC for a minute and have never fought outside of Abu Dhabi just because they have chronic visa issues. But the good news for us is most of them are really good fighters. Like, twist my arm, I got to see Saeed Nurmagomedov and Sharabulit, yeah, I think this is a pretty solid card top to bottom. And if you're a regular or a semi-regular of this show, you'll know that we occasionally get crap from the peanut gallery when we are previewing UFC Vegas 433 and we say this card is a C- or a D+ on paper. There's just nothing good going on here. Well, never let it be said that we don't give credit where credit's due, because it is a triumph of UFC matchmakers, Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby, that with everything falling apart, multiple fighters falling off, they managed to get Kennedy Nzechukwu and Chris Barnett in the cage together, the people's main event. I like how they buried him 4th or 5th on the card just so it wouldn't upstage, the title fights and you got
a couple fights to recover. It was right after, high. So you have to come down a little bit. Like you can't ride like the best roller coaster and then go right to the second best.
Yeah, or I mean, even right after you get laid for about 45 minutes, you're like, oh, don't touch me, I'm good.
All right.
This is that fight for us.
You get versatile with that. All right.
We got 14 fights to talk about. We've dapped up this card pretty good. Any other general thoughts before we dive in?
Yeah, I just usually when I get laid, it takes me 45 minutes realizing that why would someone touch me? But, yeah, cool.
All right. First up on the UFC 308 prelims is a light heavyweight matchup between Ibo Aslan and Raffael Cerqueira. Aslan, the 28-year-old from Turkey, is 13-1 overall. He's 1-0 since joining the UFC out of season 7 of Dana White's Contender Series. Fought on the Contender Series last August, made his debut in the UFC in March against Anton Turkali, knocked him out in the 3rd round. Beautiful highlight reel knockouts. He will look to make it 2 in a row here and establish himself as a rising force in the light heavyweight division. In order to do so, he will have to get past the debuting Cerqueira. 33-year-old Brazilian is a perfect 11-0 as a professional. He has fought he fought almost entirely in Brazil, primarily in I'll charitably call it a second-tier Brazilian promotion, demo fight, but fought twice already this year in January and April. He is getting the call up here to the UFC. Odds on this one, pretty close. This whole card, there are a couple of lines that are way out there, but for the most part, pretty tight lines. This one close to a pick'em. Aslan is -120, Cerqueira +100. When you look at Raffael Cerqueira and somebody tells you, yeah, he's a teammate of Jailton Almeida, you're like, oh, that makes sense, because he is a 6'4", jacked, athletic light heavyweight. I mean, he looks a little like Almeida did before he moved up to heavyweight. The difference between the two is that Jailton Almeida is a crushing wrestler and grappler who has developed some pretty decent striking, whereas Cerqueira is a striker, a kickboxer first, last, and always. In watching his tape, I mean, he throws a lot of kicks. His kicks are really powerful. I mean, he clearly comes from a Muay Thai type background. These aren't the Stephen Thompson untelegraphed flicking out these dexterous kicks. He's just winding up and just laying the wood on people. Great kicks to the legs, great kicks to the body. He switches stances quite a lot, typically using kicks to switch stances, which is nice. This observation for me is just the result of me having broken down fights with Keith for the last 4 years now. But as soon as I started watching tape on this guy, I was like, he doesn't do much in the way of defense, and what he does isn't great. Like, he's definitely a pull pull his head straight back to avoid blows guy, just a guy that's used to being taller, used to fighting people that just frankly aren't as good as him. Yeah, he probably could be defensively better, but from what I've seen of his regional tape, he kind of doesn't bother. He stands, waits his turn to throw, and just assumes that the other guy's going to fall down before him. And thus far, he's been right 11 times out of 11. I don't think that's a route to lasting success in the UFC. There are just too many guys that are just as big and fast and powerful as him that are more defensively sound. But it might be enough to get him past Ibo Aslan. Aslan's another kickboxer. Definitely a little more technical and polished, but and he might be a bit faster too. Like Aslan just seems really quick, smooth, dexterous in the cage, but he's not quite as big, and I don't think he has quite just the sheer diesel on his punches and especially his kicks as Cerqueira does. But this is a rough debut for Cerqueira. But I think there are plenty of light heavyweights in the UFC that Cerqueira could just go out there and kick him to the legs 3 times, go upstairs once, and the fight's over in 45 seconds. I just don't think Aslan is one of them. And given Cerqueira's defensive issues and the fact that even in racking up an 11-0 record, he has let some people that really don't belong in the cage with him at all hang around way too long and hit him cleanly too many times. I think Aslan knocks him out. Give me Aslan. I'm going to say second round knockout here. I feel strongly that somebody's getting knocked out in this one. But yeah, give me Aslan just as I think the more polished, more defensively sound kickboxer.
Yeah, so we have 14 fights on the card, and this one, I'm glad the line you said is really close because these two guys, they kind of both got to the UFC the same way. Like these guys beat up bums. Aslan, what we saw, yeah, he's a good striker. He's got nice output, though he's a little flat-footed, a bit of a plotter. He likes to get in the pocket and battle there. He throws hard, looping punches. He does have good power. I mean, all his wins by KO. He's got 7 in the first round. The problem is he's faced a lot of tomato cans before he reached the UFC. He is just hold your ground type striker, bite down your mouthpiece and just swing. He doesn't move his head much. He's got a good kicking game, mean leg kicks. He likes some switch kicks. I haven't seen too much of his ground game, but his one loss came by sub, so that's concerning. And cardio, to his credit, is better than I originally thought. Like I've seen him, like he didn't really tire out. Cerqueira, I always say his name. He's already 34 years old, so like making a UFC debut at 34, like I hate that. You look at his record. I mean, this dude feasted on beating up like I don't know restaurant busboys or something. I mean, I had a hard time finding his fights. I found a lot of highlights. What I've seen, he's athletic, kind of has like a taekwondo style southpaw. He's got big power. He's 8 TKOs, a lot of kicks, as you mentioned, mean body kicks. Those are pretty quick high kick. He will look for a takedown, but when I've seen him, it's really sloppy. Though he does have some subs. I mean, you got two guys. I don't really know that much about either one of these guys, and their road to the UFC. I mean, they're beating up gym teachers and plumbers and Amazon delivery drivers or something. Aslan, to his credit, obviously he got a quality win with a TKO in his UFC debut. I have a hard time making predictions about a guy when I've really only seen highlights from him. So you kind of have to think outside the box. So you tell me one guy's name is Cerqueira, the other guy's name is Aslan. Aslan is the name of the lion in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yep.
The lion, written by C.S. Lewis, a big, devout Christian. The lion is supposed to be like the Jesus figure.
Yeah.
I can't go against Big JC to start the card. So give me Aslan, my first round TKO.
Next up on the UFC 308 undercard is a middleweight matchup between Ismail Naurdiev and Bruno Silva. Naurdiev, the 28-year-old Russian-born Austrian, is 23-7 overall. He is 2-2 in the UFC, but he went 2-2 a couple years ago, was released and has been re-signed. So he's 2-2, but this is his return debut, if you want to call it that. He fought most recently almost a full year ago in Brave CF, guillotining Tahar Habibi in the first round. He will look to get above 500 in the UFC, validate the promotion's choice to re-sign him, and he's going to look to do it against Silva. 35-year-old Brazilian is 23-11 overall. He's 4-5 since joining the UFC as a former M1 global middleweight champ, and he is on a bit of a skid, having lost 3 straight fights and 5 of his last 6. He's already fought once this year. He dropped a technical unanimous decision to Chris Weidman back in March at UFC on ESPN, Blanchfield versus Fior. It was a bizarre fight where, to all appearances, he got TKO'd, but Weidman was guilty of a couple of some of the worst eye pokes you'll ever see. I mean, that's still my boy, but he poked the shit out of Ismail Naurdiev, out of Bruno Silva's eyes. At any rate, Silva was losing the fight either way. It just goes down as a decision instead of a TKO. He's looking to get back on track, and he is close to even money to do it. This is another close one. Naurdiev is minus 120, Silva plus 100. As good and as stacked as this card is, this is, I mean, gun to my head, if I had to take one fight off this card, this would probably be the one, just because I know both these guys, and neither of them are all that great. Naurdiev should be a lot better than he is. Like, he calls himself the Austrian Wonder Boy, and it is an homage to Stephen Thompson. Despite coming from a wrestling background as a youth, he is a striker. He does pretty stuff. He does stuff that, at least in a vacuum, looks like stuff that Stephen Thompson might do. Like, got some flashy kicks, just comes at you from weird angles. But at 170, it didn't really work for him in the UFC. I mean, he went 2-2 on his first run in the UFC. And while losing to Sean Brady kind of makes sense, I mean, Sean Brady was going to take this guy down and bully him, obviously. Losing the Chance Rencounter hasn't aged well. And the thing is, it's not like he went on some insane hot streak and the people demanded that the UFC sign him back. He went 3-3 while he was gone, and he got stopped in all 3 losses. And
weird.
The best fighter he lost to is Jara Al-Salawi, and we're starting to learn that Al-Salawi is just kind of another guy too. Like, I was high on Jara Al-Salawi for a minute. He's turned into just another guy. So if he's just another guy and he beat Naurdiev, what's that make Naurdiev? Like, he's super athletic. He has a unique striking style, and he's just 28 years old. So there's still plenty of possibility that he could turn a corner and become a different fighter. But demonstrably, he hasn't been. Like, he's become a bigger version of the same fighter. Over in Brave CF, he fought for their super welterweight title twice, which is 175 pounds, lost both times. Like, that's Ismail Naurdiev. He puts on a hell of a fun fight if you put the right fighter in front of him. If you put the wrong fighter in front of him, he loses, and it's kind of routine looking. Silva, we've watched Bruno Silva go from the hot shit new prospect to the guy that they throw at the hot shit new prospects. Like, he's undergone the entire life cycle of a UFC prospect in like 4 years. He massacred his first 3 opponents, 2 of them in the first round. Soon as he ran into opponents with and I mean, Keith knows, we've been doing the show for a long time. He's one of my go-to examples where, in the time between when he was killing people in M1 and the UFC signed him, the UFC signed him and he immediately missed like 2 years because of some test violations. But yeah, he was the bad Tinder date of UFC middleweights, because he did not look like the same guy when he got to the UFC. I mean, he's still a decent sized athletic middleweight, but he appeared to have lost like 15 pounds of muscle. His gas tank is atrocious. Honestly, his best success in his last 6 fights in this miserable run he's had has been kind of starting to just kind of grind and try to wrestle people a little bit, or at least just clinch and run him into the cage and nullify him. He's gone from being a sniper in M1 to being a grinder who's looking to mute his opponent's offense. It's not been pretty. And having said all that, I still think he's probably going to be able to shove Naurdiev around and do the latter-day Bruno Silva thing to him. Silva is almost certainly fighting for his job here. I can't imagine the UFC would keep him if he loses 4 straight and, 6 of 7. But give me Silva in the mild upset here to just keep marching forward on Naurdiev, not give him time to set up, launch any of the flashy kicks, shove him into the fence, maybe get takedowns from there, maybe just kind of mug him and elbow him and knee him and make his life miserable. But give me Bruno Silva to win by decision here in a forgettable fight.
So I pride myself on being able to, recall like random fighters from like UFC 14 and this and that. Then you have like Naurdiev, and I forgot that he was in the UFC until I was like, how do I know this guy? Like, I feel like I know better than this record that I read it like, oh, this guy's from the UFC. And then I started watching his fights and didn't remember them at all. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, anyways, he's going against Bruno Silva, and I kind of feel like we know what we got with Bruno Silva. I mean, he's not a very technical guy. He's a guy that fights out of both stances. He throws from his hips. Though he's pretty athletic, so he beats some people to the point of contact, but he overextends on his shots, leaving them open to be countered. He wants to brawl and fight like a wild man at times, but he's fun. He'll throw like flying knees and everything, a lot of looping shots. He's got good power, but his power is drastically overrated. I mean, yeah, sure, he knocked out Brad Tavares, but I think this is a lot more about Brad Tavares than it says about him. The dude has really declined, adding for whatever reason you want, but he's been tagged up in a lot of fights. I mean, he lacks head movements. Gerald Mershot was piecing him up on the feet. People will talk about the eye pokes, and rightfully so, against Chris Weidman. But what would be ignored of that was Chris Weidman was piecing him up on the feet. Obviously the eye pokes could change a lot of things, so I understand that. But like the ghost of Chris Weidman was getting him. Even like an extremely low level talent like Jordan Wright was landing shots on him. Now you said it well. He can close the distance, use his size in the clinch. He's strong in the clinch. I mean, we got some takedowns on Shara Bullet in that fight. And if he gets on top, he'll stall on top. He's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Andrew Sanchez took him down. Jared Mercer took him down. Turman took him down. He struggles to get back up. He is a BJJ black belt, but he doesn't have zero. He doesn't have a single submission on his record. So it's like he's one of those McDonald's belts. Naurdiev is like, I'm with you. I'm glad you said it. Like, I don't get why this guy got brought back. I mean, you talk about him going 3-3 in his last 6. He's lost 2 of his last 3. It was stopped. So he is fun. I'll say he's an exciting guy. He's got a lot of finishes. He's got 18 total finishes. When he loses, he gets finished quick. He's an action guy. He throws. You mentioned the Stephen Thompson comparison. He's a Muay Thai striker on the feet. He throws a lot of kicks, hook kicks, and body kicks. But like, this guy looks like freaking Cael Sanderson in the wrestling compared to Stephen Thompson. He'll wrestle. He likes reactionary takedowns. He has a submission threat. He's got six subs on his record. I'll say this: like, Naurdiev is the favorite, and that's like, I didn't expect that. I remember saying this on our recap show, and I said exactly what I said earlier about the eye pokes are terrible, and Weidman probably should get disqualified. But what will be forgotten is how terrible Bruno Silva looked before the eye pokes and throughout the fight. And I said, I don't care who Silva's fighting. he's toast. I'm picking whoever he fought. I didn't think they were going to pick UFC rejects. He's 3-3. Naurdiev is definitely a winnable fight for Silva, but I'm a man of my word. I say Naurdiev takes Silva down, beats him up on the ground for the majority of the fight. Give me Naurdiev by unanimous decision.
We head next to the welterweight division for a clash between Rinat Fakhretdinov and the debuting Carlos Leal Miranda. Fakhretdinov, the 33-year-old Russian, is 22-1-1 overall. He's 4-0-1 in the UFC. He's coming in off a win. He picked up a split decision over Nicholas Dalby back in June at UFC on ABC, Whitaker versus Alaskarov. He will look to add another win and put that draw against Eliseo Capoeira a little further in the rearview mirror against Leal. 30-year-old Brazilian is 21-5 overall. This, as mentioned, it's going to be his UFC debut. It was announced like Friday or Saturday, so he's coming into this on certainly no more than 10 days notice, probably closer to 8. But you might recognize him as a 2-time PFL semifinalist. He ran into Abusupiyan both times and dropped decisions, but this year he's already fought twice. Once in Brazil, once in Abu Dhabi. And here he gets the short notice call up. Odds not available yet. Leal is stepping in for Nursultan Ruziboyev. I'm pretty sure that fight would have been a near pick'em, and it would have been low key one of the coolest matchups on the card. When odds become available for this one, I expect that you'll see Fakhretdinov as a prohibitive favorite, but yeah, I mean, look out for that. I feel as though I've been slower to get on the Fakhretdinov Express. Like, you've been kind of saying this dude's for real for a couple fights now, and I've been more wait and see, and I finally waited and seen. But give me your take on this fight. Does Fakhretdinov get it done? What's the fight look like?
Yeah, generally that's how you are. Like, you're a little more cautious. We're willing to give people their due. Like there's this guy. Islam Makhachev, you're still not sure if he's any good.
Yeah.
There's this guy John Jones that you're still doubting.
Yeah, well, I mean, with Makhachev, I want to see him against a real decent striker, or somebody that's good at submissions off his back. Like, sure, he can wrestle, but what if he had like a great submission artist down there well.
Yeah. The funny thing is we're making jokes about this. Somebody somewhere actually saying what you're saying, like, the face this kind of guy. Yeah, okay, all right.
I'm sure there's somebody out there that thinks Conor McGregor could knock him out if they fought.
Oh yeah, there's plenty. I think Sean Sheehan is one of them. Shout out to our boy. This is. I'll say this. This is a fun fight. I like Carlos Leal. Like, he's good. And Fakhretdinov, I mean, I like Fakhretdinov. What I like about him, he's an action fighter. He's nonstop pressure. I love pressure guys. Like, guys that are good at stay in your face, and he's that guy. He gets in the pocket. He unloads huge shots. He throws a lot of hard looping power shots. He does swing wild and can overthrow. He has power, though. I mean, his check left hook is one of his strikes. I like that he goes to the body. He hurt Alessio Selesky dos Santos with a body shot. He has serious power on both ends. He's got 11 TKOs. Even the win that he didn't get a TKO, he dropped Nicholas Dalby, which is, we both agree is a pretty good feat because, I mean, not knocking Dalby down, but just beating Dalby is a good feat. Yeah. He's really, a really underrated guy. The thing about his striking, he gets opportunities with his striking due to his story of wrestling. People are so worried about that. He's a good wrestler, good entries, relentless to get the fight to the ground. I mean, then against Nicholas Dalby, like, when you're winning a pressure, I mean, Dalby presses back, of course, but like, you can pressure Nicholas Dalby, that's a hell of an accomplishment. He's got 6 submission wins. I mean, he subbed Kevin Lee wicked fast, which it sounds good on paper, not this point, but still, like, Kevin Lee at one time meant a lot, but I just like throwing it out there. And his cardio was surprisingly much better against Dalby. Like, he did fade against Dalby, which everyone does, but he was going hard 15 minutes. Colossal, I think he's a great addition to the UFC. He's and what I like about it is he was supposed to fight anyways, so it's not like he's taking this fight in super short notice. He was fighting this week, anyways. So he's got a lot of experience. He's beaten a lot of good guys. He fights out of both stances. A little plotting, which is kind of surprising because he's athletic. Like he'll throw flying knees out there. Like he got a flying knee, pretty much almost a knockout in his last fight. He'll throw some spinning attacks. Yeah, he'll fight out both, southpaw and orthodox, though I do like him a little bit more in the southpaw. Good using his size, hand fighting, finding his range. A little too many single strikes for my liking, but that's his hand go. He's accurate. He's got good power, a lot of TKOs, good kicks, good calf kicks, quick high kick. He does pull his head to avoid strikes. He isn't much of an offensive wrestler. He's not terrible at it, but he doesn't wrestle often. But if he gets to fight the ground, he has a few subs, and he's hard to take down himself. Like I put his takedown defense as like decent. So this is one that I kind of had to rush tape study because earlier this week, Fakhretdinov was fighting. Who was he?
Rizboyev. Yeah.
Rizboyev instead, which was really fun fight. This was like very last minute. I wish I could dig even more in because Leal's crafty. He's good. Mm-hmm. But Fakhretdinov hits hard, and he's going to wrestle. And many people don't get the chance to put their offense in motion because they're too busy, reacting to the big power shots of Fakhretdinov or the takedown attempts. I think that's going to happen. I think Fakhretdinov's going to wrestle a lot, and he's going to earn himself a unanimous decision win.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that I was slower to come around on Fakhretdinov is that I didn't appreciate until his last couple fights, like what a good wrestler he is. Like, and we say this about a lot of Russian fighters, definitely specifically ones that come from like Dagestan and Chechnya and stuff, but really anywhere in Russia, the stereotype is they all can wrestle. There's just some that want to wrestle first and others that would prefer to strike and keep the wrestling in their back pocket. Fakhretdinov is one of those. Magomedov that we're going to talk about a little bit later is one of those. I didn't fully appreciate what a solid wrestler he is. He's also he's more athletic than I thought he was. And the fact that you mentioned his cardio seems to be improving as well. Yeah, he was flagging a little bit late against Nicholas Dalby, but almost everybody does against Dalby. He is one of our favorite overachiever, builder, blood and guts guys. I agree with you that Leal is a good addition to the UFC. It's funny that Leal, for all we know, he might be a PFL millionaire right now, except that he ran into Abusupiyan twice. And the funny thing about it to me is it may just be a case of C having his number. Because if you ask me, even at the time, like, last summer, which guy I'd rather have in the UFC, like 29-year-old Miranda or C, the 36-year-old lanky kickboxer that wants to go second, I'd be like, oh, give me Miranda. I'd like to see what he can do. Whereas I already have a feeling I know how a 4-fight run for C would go. I'm glad he's in the UFC as well. Like he is a good fighter who does a lot of things well, and it's welterweight. He will slot right in alongside the action merchants who, even if he can't string together quite enough wins to break into the top 15, or he might one day, but even if he doesn't, he settles in as one of the Nico Price, Vicente Luque, Santiago Ponzinibbio types that we had 5 or 6 years ago. I'm glad to have him in the UFC, but I'm with you here. I think the style matchup favors Fakhretdinov as probably the harder hitter on the feet, a little bit bigger guy, and he'll have wrestling kind of as an outlet in his back pocket where Leal probably won't. So Fakhretdinov by decision sounds like the pick to me as well. But glad to have Leal in the UFC as well. Next up on the UFC 308 prelims is a men's bantamweight matchup between Farid Basharat and Victor Hugo. Basharat, the 27-year-old Afghanistani, formerly by way of England, but he appears to be training in the U.S. now. From what I can tell, splitting time between Extreme Couture and American Top Team. But at any rate, Afghanistani-born, 27 years old, a perfect 12-0 as a professional mixed martial artist, a perfect 3-0 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's already fought once this year, but it was all the way back in January. It was at the Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker fight night card, like the very first card of the year, where he took a unanimous decision over Taylor Lapalus. So he will look to make it 4 in a row, prove himself to be the better of the Basharat brothers and an actual contender threat at 135 pounds. He will need to get past Victor Hugo to do it. 31-year-old Brazilian is 25-4 overall. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of season 7 of the Contender Series. He fought on the Contender Series almost exactly a year ago, made his UFC debut this April at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Curtis 2, where he took a unanimous decision over Pedro Falcon. He wants to make it 2 in a row. He is not favored to do that, to say the least. Basharat is the second biggest favorite on the entire card, coming in around minus 600, where Hugo is plus 425. I have some problems with Victor Hugo. One, and really my only real problem with him is his nickname. Like, you can't nickname yourself Striker if you have more submissions than knockouts. And his name is Victor Hugo. He could have been Victor, the Hunchback of Astra Fight Team Hugo. He could have been Victor Les Miserables Hugo, but no, I'm Striker. And he's an okay striker. He's a compactly built, strong, athletic bantamweight. He has power in his strikes. I don't think he's especially technical. He's already a short guy with modest reach, and I think he makes it worse by not throwing as many straight punches as he could. He's a guy that needs to get inside to do his best work. So while up until now, I mean, he's 25-4 and he's on something like an 18-fight win streak. So clearly, I mean, don't listen to me, Victor Hugo. Whatever you're doing is working, but he's a guy that needs to, get into range against taller fighters to make his game work. He is a very good grappler. And while he's not a textbook NCAA wrestler, he has been pretty good at just using his speed, strength, tenacity to find ways to get people on the ground. I just think this is a bad style matchup because exactly the kind of person he is going to struggle against is an even faster bantamweight with good footwork and crisp counter striking. Basharat has that. And then on top of that, Basharat's a very good wrestler and grappler. I just don't think there's any real safe place for Hugo in this fight. It's really tempting to call for the finish here. I mean, Basharat is an aggressive guy who, at least when the fight is going his way, has 3 rounds worth of cardio and will just be making life miserable for Hugo the whole time. That's the way I'm leaning. Give me Basharat, and I'm going to say he gets a 3rd round submission here, but I think it'll be one of those things where he's mauling Hugo on the ground by the 3rd round, and he's getting pelted. Do you want to stay where you are and get TKO'd or turn your back and get choked? One of those type situations, but give me Basharat by 3rd round finish.
Yeah, I'm still high on both Basharat brothers, and
oh yeah,
this Basharat, I mean, he's one of the best prospects. I mean, they both are. I think both 2 of the best prospects in MMA. He's a really good striker. He's got good footwork. He moves really well, very elusive, technically sound on the feet. I like how relaxed and calculated he is. Great output. Uses feints well to set up shots. He's accurate. He doubles up his jab, which I like. I like that he works the body. He's got good calf kicks. He throws a lot of them when he's in the southpaw stance. The biggest issue offensively is that he lacks true one-punch fight-ending power. That's because he doesn't sit on his punches. He has some defensive holes. He stands up too tall. I love his wrestling. Great time on his reactionary double. Gets inside, looks for snatch singles. He doesn't care if you stop his initial takedown. He'll keep shooting. Good. I'd say great top control, good ground and pound. He's a submission threat. He's got 5 subs on his record. And I'm impressed by his cardio. He's already shown that he can go really hard all 15 minutes. Hugo's fun. He's a fun guy. Like, he's pretty aggressive on the feet. He's a brawler. He throws a lot of wild power shots. He's got some decent pop in his hands. but he backs straight up to avoid shots, which is concerning. He's got a big kicking game, though he'll throw a lot of naked leg kicks. He'll throw some spinning attacks. He will look for takedowns. He likes to get inside, body lock takedowns, but I definitely wouldn't categorize him as a wrestler. He has decent takedown defense, though. If he gets the fight to the ground, he's got a good top game. 9 subs on his record. He almost got a knee bar on the contender series, almost had a calf placer in another fight. I agree with a lot what you're saying. I really see Hugo having his only chance of victory is maybe Basharat with a sub or something, just because he is a slick, crafty kind of guy, especially because Basharat wrestles and he wrestles a lot. But Basharat, I still favor him pretty much everywhere. I expect Basharat to dominate on the feet. He will mix in takedowns. It's just part of his game. He's such a MMA, perfect blend of styles MMA. So I can't see him just like best avenue victory would just piece him up from distance. But I still see him shoot for takedowns. I think he blows this one out. I think we could get a 10-8 round, a multiple 10-8 rounds. I'm going to go by decision, but I think it's going to be lopsided. Give me Basharat by a big decision.
Next up at UFC 308 is the lone heavyweight fight on the card, unless Jocelyn Edwards decides to fly into Abu Dhabi and see if anybody needs backup fighter. It is the heavyweight debut of light heavyweight fixture Kennedy Nzechukwu against late replacement opponent Chris Barnett. Nzechukwu, the 32-year-old Nigerian by way of Texas, is 12-5 overall. He is 7-5 since joining the UFC as a 2-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on both season 1 and season 2, won both times, was signed after the second time. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, though. Stretching back a little over a year, he has a TKO loss to Dustin Jacoby last August, and then a split decision loss to Ovin St. Preux this March at UFC Fight Night, Tuivasa versus Tybura. Nzechukwu had been talking about moving up to heavyweight for at least a year that I can remember. If you are familiar with him at all, that shouldn't be too surprising. He is in the running for the largest light heavyweight on the roster. Here we finally get it. And the UFC did its best all along to make the transition to heavyweight as comfortable for this man as possible. They looked for the shortest heavyweights they could find. They got Marcos Agerio de Lima, 6'0". Marcos Pezao had to withdraw. They brought in Justin Tafa, generously listed at 6 feet tall. Tafa fell out. That's when they pick up the little red phone. They probably have to leave this phone on the floor. They call up Chris Barnett, who had been scheduled to fight 2 weeks ago at UFC Vegas 98.
They don't do a red phone. It's like the bat symbol in this guy.
Yeah.
Instead of a bat, it's like a donut or something.
Yeah. I say this about a dude in Chris Barnett that could crumple me up into a ball and like throw me out of the arena. But here comes Chris Barnett. The man they call Huggy Bear or Beast Boy, 38-year-old. I believe he's from Georgia originally, but fighting out of Florida now. He is 23-8 overall. He is 2-2 since being signed to the UFC out of literally every other promotion on the entire planet. The guy's fought everywhere from major promotions like, UAE and Ryzen. The guy was on the very first Ryzen card. Like, that's how all over the world Chris Barnett has been. At any rate, 2-2 since being signed to the UFC. That's the good news, relatively speaking. The bad news is that this will be the first time we've seen him in the cage since UFC 279 a little over 2 years ago. You may recall that UFC 279 is the one that was either ruined or blessed by Khamzat Chimaev, depending on your perspective. Chris Barnett being out for the last 2 years is almost the only thing that wasn't Chimaev's fault there, as he has had personal tragedy, injuries to himself, untimely fight withdrawals by his opponents. He's been scheduled to fight 3 or 4 times in the past 18 months, and they've all fallen through, leading right up to UFC Vegas 99 last week. But here, he gets a free trip to Abu Dhabi, and he gets a shot at Kennedy Nzechukwu. I mentioned a few minutes ago that Farid Basharat is the second biggest favorite on the card. The biggest favorite on the card, in the literal as well as figurative sense is Nzechukwu, as he's around minus 625, minus 650. Barnett out there around plus 410, plus 425. If you're watching this show and you haven't just, found us or stumbled across us for the first time, if you watched us more than once, you probably know how we feel about Chris Barnett. Even if you started watching us after the last time Chris Barnett fought, like even if you joined us within the last 2 years, we've probably talked about Chris Barnett on like every other episode. He's the next best thing to Bo Nickal for us, where we almost have to mention him every time. I did a little historical digging with Jay, with Jay Petrie, our resident Sherdog stats guy, and just tried to figure out when's the last time we had a height disparity this big in a UFC fight, because Nzechukwu is 6'5", Barnett is listed at 5'9". I think that might be generous, but assuming he is all of 5'9", the same as me, he's given up 8 inches of height to the American Savage. You'd have to go back to like Stephen.
That's the guy moving up in weight.
Yeah, and the guy moving up in weight is the 6'5" one. I thought you might have to go back to like Stefan Struve versus Pat Barry for that big of a gap, but Jay Petrie, earning his reputation, showed me some more recent ones than that, and even some more recent ones in women's divisions.
Is it that girl against Bay Malecki?
Bea Malecki versus Josiane Nunes, and Josiane Nunes probably gave up 7 or 8 inches to like Zara Ferran Santos as well.
Is that the record, Bea Malecki?
That's got to be the women's record. I mean, that's 5'2" versus 5'11". That's a 9-inch difference. That might be the biggest height disparity in a women's MMA fight in a major promotion ever. I mean, I'd have to think more about it. Enough about all that. Kennedy Nzechukwu is a much better fighter than Chris Barnett at this time in their respective careers. He's younger. He's way bigger. He's more athletic. Although Chris Barnett is shockingly athletic, especially, compared to how he looks. But I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I am extremely uncomfortable taking Kennedy Nzechukwu as a big favorite, considering, one, that he's moving up to a new weight class for the first time, and two, even at light heavyweight, he has generally lived and died by just horrible defensive lapses. Like a little bit of bad luck here and there, but also just winning a fight until he just gets lamped. Because if there's a guy in the heavyweight division that could be losing, and then just uncork something ridiculous, it's Chris Barnett. Nzechukwu wants to do the right thing. He was at light heavyweight, and he will be again at heavyweight, one of the tallest fighters in the division with some of the longest reach. And he knows that. And he does try to fight an out fight when he can, or, an all the way in fight when he's forced to. Like, he does try to keep people on the end of his jab. He does throw nice long kicks to try to not just damage people, but discourage them from trying to crash the pocket. It works sometimes. When people get all the way inside, he is absolutely terrifying in the clinch. Just his knees and elbows are vicious. He's extremely physically strong. He doesn't normally try to initiate takedowns from the clinch, but he generally can fight him off pretty well. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I'm really tempted to take Barnett. I'm really tempted to take Barnett in the upset here, and not just as kind of like har. Like,
I did it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Just if Barnett was on the same, win one, lose one thing that he is right now, but he had fought 6 months ago, I'd actually be fine riding with him for the upset. But it's been 2 years. He's 38 years old. While there are plenty of fighters who come back from like personal tragedy and adversity to author the, greatest wins of their careers. I mean, think of like Buster Douglas, Buster Douglas's mom dying and, him beating Mike Tyson a couple days later. but the distractions that Chris Barnett have been ones that have to have affected his preparation on some level. And we're talking about a guy that's 5'9" and has trouble making the heavyweight limit. For all those reasons, I'm like, he's got like a round to do his thing. And then after that, even if Nzechukwu makes just a horrible defensive gaffe, I don't know if Barnett's going to have the wherewithal or enough left in the tank to really take advantage. So I'm thinking Kennedy Nzechukwu actually wins a fight that is a whole lot of fun for the first round and then kind of a drag for the second and third, as Barnett is exhausted and Nzechukwu just can't quite put him away, but it's just kind of a depressing drubbing. So give me Kennedy Nzechukwu to rack up his first win at heavyweights in uncontroversial fashion by whooping up on Chris Barnett.
Yeah. So, I mean, Chris Barnett, I mean, the guy's an all-time character. I'll talk about this guy. Everything I'm going to say about him, I said about him 2 weeks ago. Like, he was supposed to fight, and then, I don't know, he had, I don't know, diabetic shock or something. I don't know. Yeah, he's a short, fat guy, which, as a fellow short, fat guy, I can appreciate him rising to this level. He's surprisingly athletic. I'll give him that. He's got tons of heart. He's got that traditional Taekwondo style, which is kind of funny seeing a big guy do it. He's southpaw. He loves to follow his shots into the pocket and brawl. He throws a lot of looping punches. He does throw from his hips. He goes for a Superman punch a lot, which works well for a shorter guy to close the distance. One quick move. He throws out some swinging attacks.
He fights like Kung Fu Panda.
Yes, that's great. Yes, Kung Fu Panda. I guess Kenny Nzechukwu is a bad guy from Kung Fu Panda. He likes to throw a lot of kicks, which works well against orthodox fighters. He uses his movement to he uses a lot of movement, doesn't he? Laterally, he'll move straight back, which is an issue. Ben Rothwell made him pay with uppercuts when Barnett was ducking his head and kind of throwing. He is an underrated wrestler. Like, he showed he can sneak a takedown defense. He can sneak. So I don't know what the hell I'm saying. I think I'm having a shock. He showed that he can sneak a takedown in. He struggled to get off the cage, though, against Martin Budai. He struggled to get back to his feet against Ben Rothwell when he was taken down. If he's on top, he's got good ground and pound, but he's not a submission threat at all. Now, Kenny Nzechukwu, I'm glad this guy's moving up to heavyweight because you just look at the guy, you can tell he has a big weight cut. Another thing is just he's been so inconsistent. Moving up to heavyweight, he has a big weight cut, but also he's not going to be on the size, especially against a Fraggle like Chris Barnett. He can strike from the outside or the inside. He works behind a jab. He also likes to get inside and use his size to bully his opponents. Really upped his output against Kyle Roberson, and beat him with pressure. But he wants to be a guy moving forward. He doesn't want to be pressured back. He does have some power, and moving up to heavyweight, I think it actually will increase. Defensively, he pillars, which is a huge mistake, especially at heavyweight, because if they land some of these big shots through his defense, he could be out. He also keeps his chin high in the air, so he pillars, but doesn't even pillar correctly, where you kind of turtle it underneath these shots. He makes himself a big target. His defense is to eat punches and kind of take the ground, but he eats punches because he lacks head movement. He was hurt by OSP in his last fight. He's got strong thudding kicks. He loves teep kicks. He likes stepping knees. That's the best part of his game, is stepping knee. He uses his size well in the clinch. Got some mean clinch striking. He beat Devin Clark up in the clinch, hit him with some nice blows. He will wrestle, but he isn't a strong wrestler. Because of his size and strength, he's got a pretty good top game, kind of lays on his opponent. Got some mean ground and pound, landed some of the meanest elbows on top of Kyle Robinson that I've seen. He's not a submission threat at all, and his takedown defense is bad. If he can't get back to his Well, he does have a little Derek Lewis thing where he can kind of just use his size, but I don't know if that's going to be able to work when he goes against the bigger heavyweights if he ever gets put on his back. But I like his cardio. I think going up to heavyweight, that's going to be a little more advantage. I picked Barnett over Taffer a couple weeks ago. That said, like, I agree, like, I'm not in on Nzechukwu, but there couldn't be a better person for Nzechukwu to face at heavyweight than Huggy Bear, because sure, when you move up in weight, you're concerned about the size difference, but he's going to be the big guy. Like, he might give up pounds, but he's going to be bigger moving up. I expect him to jab Barnett up from the outside, and then when he gets inside, he's controlling the clinch. He's landing hard knees. I think Barnett is going to gas out because of the clinch striking from Nzechukwu, and I say Nzechukwu is going to second round TKO.
The UFC 308 undercard heads back to the middleweight division for a matchup between Magomedov and Bruno Ferreira. Magomedov, the 34-year-old Dagestani, long time fighting out of Germany, though. I mean, he's repped Germany and trained and fought out of Germany for like a decade. Anyway, 34-year-old, 26, 6-1 overall, 2-2 since joining the UFC as a standout from the very first season of Professional Fighters League back in 2018. I believe the UFC wanted him right out of that, but he didn't end up actually debuting in the UFC until 2022. Since then, 2-2, and he's coming in off a win. He fought back in May at UFC Fight Night Barboza versus Murphy, where he took a unanimous decision over Warley Alves. So he'll look to make it 2 in a row against Ferreira. 31-year-old Brazilian is 12-1 overall. He is 3-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's on a 2-fight win streak, comprising both of his fights this year. He knocked out Phil Hawes in the first round back in January, came back in June, and knocked out Dustin Stoltzfus in the first round. So I'm sure he'd love to keep up the streak of first round knockouts, but would probably be satisfied with just keeping up the win streak. He is not favored to do so, but this is another near pick'em where Magomedov is minus 140, Ferreira around plus 115, 110, 115 or so. I thought Magomedov would be a lot better in the UFC than he has been. And part of it might be that he just looked better in PFL than he really is. Part of it might be that it's 6 years later now and, he's pushing into his middle 30s. But yeah, he's slotted in as just another middleweight. Like, he's a good sized, pretty athletic guy. And again, the usual Dagestani rap. He knows how to wrestle, but would prefer to strike. He's one of those. But yeah, he's not as crisp on the feet as I thought he would be. He hasn't really turned to his wrestling to win rounds or give him an outlet when the striking isn't going his way in the way I thought he would after watching him in PFL. And he has been kind of inert sometimes. Like, he's just not been a round winner in closely matched fights. I just don't trust him to throw enough strikes, just do enough. I can see this guy sticking around, for 6 more fights and having like 3 split decisions in there. He's just become one of those fighters. And Ferreira, whatever else may be said about him, we're not going to see a whole lot of split decisions from this guy. He is kill or be killed. His nickname is the Hulk. He is one of those guys that I think I literally said on our preview ahead of his debut, even after he, crushed a guy on the Contender Series, when a fighter comes from Brazil or certain parts of Asia or the CIS and they have a build like that and a bunch of first round knockouts, let's wait for not just a couple of fights against UFC level competition, but maybe a couple cycles through, the UFC's testing. Ferreira has been just fine. And maybe that is the move from, USADA to Drug Free Sport International or whatever the UFC is using now. Maybe it's coincidental with all the 38 and 40 and 41-year-old fighters that are suddenly fighting better than they ever have before. But whatever the reason, I'm glad for it, because I like when Ferreira looks like the Hulk and fights like the Hulk. He's not the most technical striker, but everything has a ton of gas on it. Yeah, aggressive, defensively porous, and just thus far, there's been exactly one guy who's been able to make him pay for it, and it was Nursultan Ruzaboyev, who is long, lanky, underratedly hard hitter, and just, I mean, it reminded me of when Corey Anderson knocked out Johnny Walker like 5 years ago or so, where the first time he ran into a guy that wasn't kind of intimidated and put on his heels by this huge guy coming at him swinging wildly, he slipped one or two punches, plunked the guy in the face, and the fight was over. Magomedov could do that to Bruno Ferreira, but I just don't think he's going to. And I think he might be slowing down a little bit. It's not much of an upset, but I like Ferreira in this one. And if Ferreira's going to win, it's going to be quick and it's going to be ugly. So give me Bruno Ferreira by first round knockout. Just going to say Magomedov is going to think he has a little more space and time than he really has, and he's going to catch something on the chin in the first round, and that'll be it.
So I love how you talked about how Magomedov has not looked as good as you expected, and talked about, maybe in the PFL he looked better, or his debut, and we think, just say it. You mean you thought he was going to be better because his last name was Magomedov?
Probably. We got about 15 people on this card with Magomed either in their first or their last name. Yeah. I probably just swept them through the door, but no.
If I ever move to that side of the world, I'm just going to name myself Magomed just so people think I'm tough. They don't want to think. Magomedov, I mean, he doesn't look like it, but he's a pretty solid athlete. He's long and lengthy. He can fight out of both stances. Decent hand speed, decent power. Very unorthodox though. Like, he likes to lead with his right hand a lot. He'll throw some combinations. And he switches stance in mid combination, which is one of my favorite things. Though he has been gun shy at some other fights, like against Bahio, he was very gun shy. A lot of single strikes. He kept head hunting in that fight. He's got a good kicking game. He got a nice high kick. He's got that incredible front kick that Dennis Stolfoots to send him in, that instantly sent him into like main event contention because of it. He's got good push kicks, good calf kicks. He will throw him naked though. He's a good wrestler. He likes to get in close, and he's even unorthodox the way he wrestles. Like, he looks like shucks inside, which is fun to see. And I'm not going to explain that right now if people don't know what shucks is. Just Google it. He wrestled Alves a lot in his last fight, and used that to get to victory. Good top control, good back takes. He has a submission threat. Cardio has failed in the past. I think he did against Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland's pressure really got to him. We asked this if it's less to do with his cardio, more with him being front runner, doesn't like to handle adversity well. I think the jury's still out on that, but we're going to find out right away, because he'll have a cardio advantage over against a guy like Bruno Ferreira, because Bruno Ferreira's on the gas the second the fight goes, and until he blows an engine. He's a southpaw that, he can fight out both stances. He sets up his shots well with feints, and then he explodes. When he explodes, he's not very tactical. He throws hard. His short right hook from the southpaw stance is my favorite blow that he throws. He's got crushing power. He's got 9 TKOs. Defense is a huge issue. He's very hittable. He keeps his chin high in the air. He's up in the leg kicks. He isn't just a power, get in the pocket, throw big shots like Mike Tyson. Like, he has a judo background. He showed that he had judo against Phil Hollis, who's on paper a decent wrestler, which I think is a good sign for Ferreira. He's got some good entries. He has a submission threat. He's got 3 subs on his record, but he's got a weak takedown defense. He showed he can't get off the bottom when taken down against very good grappling like Grady Rodriguez, and he has really bad cardio. He's got to blow it really quickly. And then you have to worry about his chin, as he just got starched by Ruzaboyev. This is a tough fight to pick because I'm not very high in either guy. I like Ferreira early, even though I said that Magomedov might be a front runner. If he can weather the storm and start to wrestle, he should win. But I don't think he's going to get the chance. I think Ferreira's going to crowd the kicker. I think he's going to throw a lot of haymakers. I think he's going to land one of them. And I'm going to say Ferreira puts him on the first round. So we got an upset. Consensus upset pick. Give me Farid by first round TKO.
There you go. We're back, folks. Much love to Dane Fox for filling in on the UFC Vegas 99 preview last week. He did a fantastic job. He was well prepared. I thought there were some funny moments there. I really enjoyed taping the show, but we had no consensus underdog picks, and that's just not acceptable. So it's nice to be home.
So he blew his one chance. That's it. You're out. Go back to the minors, buddy.
Yeah. Bantamweights take the cage next at UFC 308 as Said Nurmagomedov faces off against Daniel Santos. Nurmagomedov, the 32-year-old Dagestani, is 18-3 overall. He is 7-2 in the UFC. He is coming in off a win. He fought almost exactly a year ago at UFC 294, guillotining Muin Gafarov in like 60 seconds. That allowed him to bounce back from his extremely close, frankly contentiously close decision loss to Jonathan Martinez last March. But he's been on the shelf for a year. He is back. He is in the friendly confines of Abu Dhabi, and he's taking on Daniel Willy Cat Santos. 29-year-old Brazilian is 12-2 overall. He is 2-1 in the UFC, and he's on a 2-fight win streak. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's against two guys in John Castaneda and Johnny Munoz Jr. that I'm pretty sure both are out of the UFC right now. And in either event, the most recent of those two, the Munoz fight, was almost 18 months ago. He's been on the shelf for even longer than Nurmagomedov has, but he's looking to extend his win streak to 3. And in one of the deepest, most competitive divisions in the entire promotion, 3 wins is 3 wins. He is not favored to get it. Having said that, Nurmagomedov is minus 300, Santos plus 225 coming back. Keith, obviously two guys that, have been away from the cage for a year and a half apiece. Do you feel any interest in either of these guys as a potential future contender, or is this just another fun action fight? Tell me who you think wins.
I think it's fun action fight. Obviously, Magomedov has a little more upside. But I feel like he takes one step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and he's starting to fall behind or something. And I said that wrong because you're not falling behind if you go 2 forward or 1 back. But you get my point. It's like you're playing chess, and he's like the knight instead of the rook who could just go across the board the whole way. You're like, it's kind of his way of going. Or the Magomedov, he's pretty well rounded. He's a solid striker. I've said this before about him. I think he's a better striker than he is a wrestler, which I'm sure many will disagree with me on that. But if I just said about Abus, if his last name wasn't, I know it's Nurmagomedov, but if his last name wasn't Nurmagomedov, I don't think people would disagree with that. If his last name was Jones, I think they'd agree with it. He sets up his shot well due to his movement and his footwork. He's a technical striker from the distance. He'll explode when there's an opening. He'll lull and then he almost whips punches at you. He's got good power, but makes this mistake that he pulls his punches sometimes by leaning back when he strikes. I like his kicking game. Very creative with his kicks. Great dexterity in his hips. I love his question mark kick. He'll land kicks to all parts of the body. He's really sneaky that he hides his kicks behind his combination. I'll throw a combination and then throw like a question mark kick at the end of it, or a hook kick at the end of it that's kind of hidden behind his combinations. I've said before, it's very like Stephen Thompson-like. He's a good wrestler though, so I dogged his wrestling, but again, I think his wrestling's overrated. He's more of a funky style, like wind scrambles kind of wrestler than explode through your hips, Jordan Burroughs type. He is a submission artist though. Like he's got 5 subs. He's got an incredible guillotine. Like I think he's more of a grappler than he is a wrestler. Well, he did gas a little against Jonathan Martinez, and that's a fight that probably cost him a close fight. Santos, again, this is a guy you kind of forget about him because not only has he been out for a year, but it's like he fights once this year, he fights one the year before, and it's just like he's just so inconsistent. Like you just forget about the guy. What I like him on, he's a good athlete. He's got nice volume. I go back to like the Castaneda fight. He with pressure. He showed off also a great chin against Castaneda because he just kept moving forward, eating shots, but taking the ground. He's got quick hands. He's got some pop in his hands. I love that he works the body. He's got a big kicking game, nice hard body kicks. He's got a great stepping knee. He'll toss out some spinning attacks. He is very hittable, though. He doesn't move his head. He also doesn't tuck his chin. He kept dipping to the right, which is why he got high kicked twice by John Castaneda. He will look to get the fight to the ground, but I wouldn't call him like an offensive wrestler. He's more of a guy that's like try to create a scramble and win that. And he does have 2 subs on his record. He showed great sub defense against Johnny Munoz, which is not the best win, but the way the fight went was good. I like Santos' style. Like he's fun. The problem is I feel like he's very similar to Magomedov, just not as good. He's just like the lesser version. He's like the iPhone 6 compared to the iPhone. I don't know what iPhone are we on?
I think my wife has a 15. Yeah.
Okay, 15. Okay, so like if the Magomedov's the iPhone 15, he's like the iPhone 9. Like I'm sure it's good. It's just not as good. I'm sure the camera's not as good. The mic or whatever. He's a better athlete. He's faster. He hits harder. He can land more takedowns. He's a better overall grappler. Santos showed that he's tough. I just think the Magomedov wins. I'll say the Magomedov wins a unanimous decision.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there. And I kind of alluded to while introducing these two guys that Nurmagomedov's loss to Jonathan Martinez last March was very close. It goes down as a unanimous decision, but if you look at MMA decisions, media, including you and I, went for Nurmagomedov in that one at about a 75% clip. And we're not always right, but I will take the consensus of media viewers on MMAdecisions.com over the actual UFC judges most of the time. Just you get 15 or 20 people that watch a lot of fights. I mean, it was a close competitive fight, but I thought Nurmagomedov won. And if he won, I mean,
it's also like
it's
also like 20 people's opinion over 3, compared to 3.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I like how you mentioned that his wrestling isn't quite as good as you would think for a guy named Nurmagomedov with that haircut and beard, and his striking and grappling might be better than you would expect. Like that's really my take on him as well. And anecdotally, you look at his 2 losses in the UFC. He lost to Hani Barcelos 5 years ago, and Barcelos that was a close competitive fight, but where Barcelos won the fight was with the wrestling. Like he didn't get a clean takedown until the 3rd round, but he at least tied up Nurmagomedov with like rear waist locks against the cage and just made his life miserable and punched him from behind for most of the first 2 rounds, and then got an actual for real takedown in the 3rd. And that probably made the difference in the fight. Then you go up to the Martinez fight, and Martinez is one of the better strikers in the division, and Nurmagomedov hung with him just fine. And again, in my opinion, and yours, probably should have won the fight. I agree that he is cut from a similar mold to Santos, but probably just a little better everywhere. Santos is athletic, exciting, fun. I don't know where Shoot-a-Box Diego Lima gets him. They must just have a factory somewhere in that town that just cranks out 5'7", 125 or 135 pound guys with bleach blonde hair that are really athletic. And some of them end up not being able to fight very well. Like you look at Daniel Lacerda. Some of them, you look at Alan Nascimento, and they can fight really damn well. Santos falls somewhere in the middle. Like, he's pretty good. He's going to stick around the UFC for a while, but I think Nurmagomedov is a much better fighter, and I think we're going to see that on Saturday. Give me Nurmagomedov by decision here as well. Next up at UFC 308 is a lightweight matchup between Mateusz Rebecki and Miktabek Orolbai. Rebecki, the 32-year-old Pole, is 19-2 overall. He is 3-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He won on the Contender Series a little over 2 years ago, fought 3 times last year and won all 3, the last 2 by finish, before running into Diego Ferreira at UFC on ESPN, Lewis versus Nascimento this May. Ferreira, despite being 312 years old, looked like a man renewed, in absolutely vintage form, and really put Rebecki in his place. Got the TKO late in the 3rd round. So Rebecki, 5 months later, looking to bounce back from that, get back in the win column. He had been on, it might have been the longest win streak in the entire UFC before the Ferreira fight. It was something like an 18 or 19 fight, or sorry, it had to be like a 16 or 17 fight win streak. He'd love to start another one. He's going to have to get past Orolbai to do so. Orolbai, 26-year-old from Kyrgyzstan, 13-1-1 overall. He's 2-0 since joining the UFC a little over a year ago. He made a short notice debut in the UFC last November and tapped out Uroš Medic in the 2nd round. Came back at UFC 301 this May and picked up a unanimous decision over Elvis Brenner. So he's looking to make it 3 in a row and sort of quietly declare himself one of the more interesting rising prospects in the 155-pound division. He is favored to do so. He is minus 300, Rebecki plus 225 or so as the underdog. I still don't believe in Mateusz Rebecki. I've picked every single one of his UFC fights wrong, I believe. I think I picked him to lose. No, there's no way I picked him to lose Nick Fury. But, yeah, I didn't pick him to lose to Nick Fury. But I might have picked him to lose to both Loic Radzhabov and Roosevelt Roberts, and he just trashed both of them. And so when they matched him up with Diego Ferreira this May, I was like, okay, I'm not going to let my Texas bias get in my way. Ferreira is 40 years old. He's not looked great recently. Rebecki might not be the truth, but he's got enough to get past Ferreira, and Ferreira just dog walked him. So I can't pick Mateusz Rebecki fights. So I'm going to break this fight down. And if you're a betting man, just do the opposite of what I say. Like, all of this to say he is better than I thought he was. Like, coming out of, various European promotions, I see this 5'7", 5'8", just ridiculously jacked lightweight. And you can get away with being a 5'7" lightweight in the modern UFC if you have Michael Chandler athleticism and Michael Chandler wrestling background, and he just really didn't have either. He just
Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah, another great example where Alvarez fought even up to 170 and was just so damn good at fighting.
Who would have thought that you mentioned Michael Chandler and I would think of Eddie Alvarez? Let's go figure. Those guys never had
two names bound together in history. Yeah. Rebecki, he's more athletic than I thought, and win or lose, he does have the cardio to go 3 rounds. Like, I mean, in some of his fights in Poland, like, he almost like looked muscle bound back in the day. I was like, could this dude like touch his hands over his head? I'm not sure. But no, he is more athletic than I thought. He's still a completely unrefined striker. Like, just, wants to wait for the one perfect shot, or at least one shot that gets the guy on his heels and then swarms with just, a barrage of hooks. Not a whole lot of finesse to it. When he decides to kick, his kicks are really hard. But, I mean, his legs are shorter than the arms of most of the guys in that division. Like, this isn't PFL, so I don't know his leg reach, but Orolbai's arms might be longer than Rebecki's legs. Rebecki is a fairly effective offensive wrestler when he decides to be, again, kind of poor man's Michael Chandler, where Chandler is a great technical wrestler who on top of that finishes some takedowns that he shouldn't be able to just because he's so strong and so fast. Robeski has a little bit of that just without the, I wrestled since I was 4 years old that Chandler has. Robeski is a guy at this point that I think probably will stick around the UFC for a while and give us some fun fights, but he's running into a guy in Orolbai that I think this guy's ready to shine. He's big, athletic, well-rounded, has good poise for a relatively young guy that's relatively new to fighting on the biggest stages, because fighting back in the CIS, he was fighting in like third tier promotions against terrible fighters in like, dingy gyms. He had a couple fights in LFA and then just kind of got launched to the UFC. And I think he's been really good. Neither Uros Medic or Elvis Brenner are like world beaters, but they're both solid guys. And he beat them both really convincingly and just kind of showed a full MMA skill set. Like, I think he's a good striker, that he's not the tallest guy on paper, but kind of mysteriously fights longer than that. Like after Rob Font just got a fantastic win this past weekend, shout out to guys that I always think are taller than they are just because they kind of fight tall. Orolbai is one of those. And then just a good wrestler who can scramble, but is also good at being positionally sound and just kind of shutting down guys who want to scramble and get funky with them and just settling in top position and mauling them, looking for the submission. I'm excited to have Orolbai in the UFC, and I think it's going to be a kind of coming out party for him here. Robeski has some nice, he had some nice momentum going before running into Ferreira. He'd love to get it back, but I don't think he's going to. Give me Orolbai to really kind of piece Robeski up on the feet, just sidestep his aggressive charges, touch him up. I don't know if Robeski can get Orolbai down or at least keep him down. Like I could see him like shooting right through his hips, dumping him, and then Orolbai's back up 3 seconds later. But I think Orolbai can probably take Robeski down if he wants, and I think he could do work there. Give me Orolbai by second round submission here, but I think he's going to beat Robeski in all phases on his way there.
Yeah, I think the breakdown of Robeski is pretty good. It just comes down to he's a really inconsistent guy. I mean, the guy looked great against Luka Razabov. He looked great against Roosevelt Roberts. I mean, everyone looks. He actually did look good against Nicholas Ferreira. It was actually closer than it should have been. But then, like you mentioned it, he looked terrible against Carlos Diego Ferreira, a fight that he was a big, big favorite over. He's a short, compact fighter. He's a southpaw. On the feet, he's got good volume, fights with tons of pressure, bob and weave style. Gets inside and he throws a lot of hot hooks. He's got good power. He's got 8 TKOs. He targets the body with a lot of shots, gets some nice inside leg kicks. Beat Razbarov with leg kicks. That was probably his best win. Like, he looked really good in that fight. But he's very hittable. Like, he gets hit a lot. I mean, Diego Ferreira hit him a lot. He's a solid wrestler. He's very physically strong. Like, I go back to the Contender Series where he just grabbed his opponent, lifted him over his head and slammed him. Strong top game. Looks to pass on the ground. I mean, he looked Razabov at a crucifix. Solid back takes, good ground and pound. He's got 6 subs. He hit Roosevelt Roberts, one of the slickest arm bars I think I've ever seen. His cardio is an issue. I mean, he gassed a little against Nick Fury, and he gassed really bad against Carlos Diego Ferreira. So again, I think I'm still probably a little higher on Robeski than you are, but I think he's shown that like this part of the card is like his peak. Orolbai, I mean, he's a really, really solid fighter. Really well-rounded, solid boxing, clean 1-2s down the pipe. He loves to bob and weave to avoid strikes, falls that to get in the pocket, and he unloads big shots. He hits hard. I like that he throws inside leg kicks to kind of line up his. He'll throw an inside leg kick to kind of move his opponent to line up his straight shot. A lot of his striking is also to set up, distract for his entries, where he's a really good wrestler. He's also nonstop with his attacks. He's shooting fast entries. He needs to improve his overall control on top. But I like when he gets the post, gets the Dagestani handcuff, controls there. He's got some good back takes. He has a submission threat. He's got 5 subs on his record. So again, I think I like Rebeski, but I think Audible is just a bad matchup for him. To me, he's a bigger, much better athlete than Carlos Tejeda Ferreira. I think he's better than Rebeski everywhere. He's bigger. Not probably physically strong, but he's big, longer. I think he batters Rebeski for the majority of the fight. I think Rebeski completely gas out. Audible gets a finish. Give me Audible the 3rd round TKO.
Next up at UFC 308, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the top prelim is a welterweight matchup between Geoff Neal and Rafael dos Anjos. Neal, the 34-year-old Dallas native, is 15-6 overall. He is 7-4 since joining the UFC out of season 1 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. Going back to UFC 285 last March, he got tapped out in the 3rd round by Shavkat Rakhmonov, though had made a pretty good show of things for much of that fight, but then came back at UFC 298 this February and dropped a split decision to Ian Gary. So he is looking to snap his 2nd losing streak of his UFC run. In order to do so, he will have to get past Rafael dos Anjos. 39-year-old Brazilian is 32-16 overall. He's 21-14 in the UFC. Yes, this will be his 36th UFC fight. He is, of course, the former lightweight champ. Notable and relevant to this fight, he is 5-5 at welterweight. And he is on a 2-fight losing streak of his own going back a little over a year. He dropped a unanimous decision to Vicente Luque at welterweight last August, then came back at UFC 299 this March at lightweight and dropped a unanimous decision to Mateusz Gamrot. So he's looking to snap a losing streak of his own, looking to prove that at age 39, he has a home somewhere in the UFC in one of these 2 divisions. He is not favored to do any of those things. Neal is minus 330, Dos Anjos plus 240 coming back. Man, Geoff Neal, I mean, from the moment he stepped into the UFC, out of the Contender Series, he looked like he might be the pick of the litter from season 1 of Dana White's Contender Series. You could have picked out Geoff Neal, and I said, okay, out of the, I think they only signed 10 or 11 fighters that whole season. But if you asked me to pick which one of these guys is a UFC champ one day, Neal would have been one of the first 2 or 3 guys I would have picked. He's a boxer with crushing power and the kind of power that just comes from being strong and having solid technique, usually doesn't overswing, just has the power of a good boxer. Athletic, strong, good cardio, good enough wrestling most of the time. He looked like a future contender. Sometimes he still does. But then sometimes he just kind of incomprehensibly loses fights that he should win. And some of his most impressive moments have come in losses even. He got tapped out by Shavkat Rakhmonov with just a gnarly standing rear naked choke. But before that, he probably did more damage to Rakhmonov than anyone else that Rakhmonov's fought so far. Gilbert Burns might have given him a tougher overall fight, but Neal probably hit Rakhmonov cleanly more than any of his other UFC opponents. Just he was razor close against Ian Gary. Here, the current version of Rafael dos Anjos, and unless at 39, he and Diego Ferreira have been talking, and he's getting some of whatever nutrition plan Ferreira's on. Dos Anjos is kind of tailor-made for Neal to get back on track against. At his best, Dos Anjos, even in his prime, even when he was champ, he was a little undersized for lightweight. I mean, he was a big muscular guy, but he was short, had short arms, but became a very effective striker despite those handicaps. And then his bread and butter was always his wrestling and top position grappling. He was just the lightweight Glover Teixeira, all the way down to the very underrated boxing. But at welterweight, like right away, we found out what Dos Anjos' ceiling was going to be at welterweight. As soon as he ran into people that could bully him like he bullied lightweights, that's when he lost. Like he ran into Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, just guys that were bigger and just as good or a better wrestler than him. That was Dos Anjos' ceiling at welterweight 6 years ago when he was 33. At 39, he really has slowed up a bit. His hands are slower. I don't trust his durability as much or his cardio. I mean, he used to have incredible cardio. Here, I mean, how does Rafael dos Anjos win this fight? I don't think he can take down Neal and control and beat him up from top position for 2 rounds out of 3. And on the feet, he's going to be reduced to either throwing leg kicks, which he does have some good ones when he throws them, and Neal doesn't always pay close enough attention to those, or trying to catch Neal with one huge shot. And Neal has taken artillery from bigger guys and better strikers than Dos Anjos and hasn't been knocked out by them. Usually when you and I talk about fights on these cards, we're usually talking about fights where we think the odds should be closer. Here, Neal's coming in like minus 300. And if it were more, I wouldn't be that shocked. Like I wouldn't have a big problem with it because just Neal's younger. He's in his natural weight class. He's got a lot less tread off the tires. And while he makes mistakes and has lapses, he doesn't make the kind of mistakes that I think would let Dos Anjos finish him or win like 2 rounds out of 3. Give me Neal to beat Dos Anjos here. And Dos Anjos has so much scar tissue that he tends to look like he's been hit with a baseball bat at the end of the first round of most of his fights now. I'm picking Neal by decision, but if Neal cuts Dos Anjos bad early, TKO stoppage due to cut. It sounds like a weird thing to call, but watch it happen. Watch Dos Anjos be bleeding like a stuck pig by the end of the first round as Neal is just snapping him with that jab. Give me Neal in a pretty lopsided decision here, but again, TKO from accumulated damage wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, this fight is a weird fight. I looked at this. Rafael dos Anjos turns 40 the night of the fights. Like, he gets his birthday. Like, his birthday present is fight Jeff Neal. He's
going to spend his birthday in a hospital in Abu Dhabi. Great.
Yeah, like getting stitched up. Like, that's a big one. Like,
yeah.
I brought my wife to Hawaii for 40. He gets to get friggin' high kicked by Jeff Neal. Like, unbelievable. It's also like, besides the age, this is a tough weight class to be old in, and add in that he has taken like historic amount of damage since joining the UFC. It's just, oh man, like what does he still do good? I mean, he's a southpaw. His output is still out there. He's got good tight boxing. He attacks the combination. He's always been a little unorthodox, but he likes to lead with his rear power a lot. He still has some old man power. He's always been a good kicker. And think about his title run. The UFC. He was, one of the best. He closes the distance well, and despite being undersized, he can fight in the clinch. Some dirty boxing. He's one of the best grapplers in UFC history. The problem is he's shown, like, I don't trust his wrestling anymore. Like, yeah, he had a couple of trips against Raffael, but his takedown defense has really collapsed. He was easily out grappled by Vicente Luque. Mateus Gamera took him down with ease. He did show that he's hard to hold down. Like, he still can get up. If he ends up on top, he's a good topside grappler. He's a black belt, and he's got 10 submissions, but he's never been Charles Oliveira in that sense. His hand speed has declined also. Obviously, his chin is held up, but all those years, we know that MMA chins can just evaporate overnight. It still has cardio. He only has to go 15 minutes, so 15 minutes shouldn't be a problem with him. But man, when you compare him to Jeff Neal, just the athleticism, like Jeff Neal is so athletic. He's so big. He's elusive. He's got good footwork. He's got fast hands. As long as he lets his hands go. I mean, he had that one weird fight against Cesar Ponzinibbio where he won, but it was like this low output. It made it closer. But when he's let his hands go, he's explosive. He's accurate. He's got nice, clean, straight shots down the pipe. I love that you mentioned the Shavkat fight. Like he had Shavkat beat up sometimes. Did really well in that fight. I love his straight left. He'll throw singles. He'll throw a straight left down the pipe as a lead, like the power punch, and then he'll even double up, which is kind of confusing. Yeah, that's something you see a lot. He steps in and he'll throw this mean uppercut. He has serious power. Go back to like the Luque fight. I mean, he hurt Luque a bunch of times before starting him. I mean, he hurt Shavkat Rakhmonov, who we haven't seen. He's got mean body kicks, crushing high kick, which he loves to throw off of counters. He doesn't wrestle much, but he got takedowns against Nico Price, Neil Magny, Vicente Luque. So, he has the ability there. He's shown a really hard ground and pound, and he's big and hard to take down. So, I mean, does RDA have anything like left up his sleeve? Any tricks left up his sleeve? I doubt it. I'm with you, man. You said what the betting line was -300 around that.
Yeah.
Like,
if it was -500, I wouldn't have blinked.
Yeah, like I don't know if I'd go as much as 500 because it's RDA and maybe. It's in Abu Dhabi where things happen when people travel overseas, but like -450. Like I guess I'm nitpicking here. I'd be really surprised if RDA wins. I mean, Jeff Neal's gonna be too fast for him, too vicious. As long as Jeff Neal doesn't have like too much respect for RDA, if he just walks him down, he matches his output. Neal should knock him into next week. We haven't seen RDA's chin really crumble. I think we're finally going to get that. Give me Jeff Neal by second round TKO.
The 5-fight main card of UFC 308 begins with a middleweight matchup between Sharabutin Magomedov and Armen Petrosyan. Magomedov, the 30-year-old Dagestani, is 14-0 overall. He is 3-0 since joining the UFC almost exactly a year ago. Since then, he has a decision win over Bruno Silva, a third-round TKO of Antonio Trocoli, and most recently at UFC on ABC, Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov back in August, a unanimous decision over Michal Oleksiejczuk. So the man they call Shara Bullet will look for his fourth straight win at 185 pounds, and he will look for it against Petrosyan. 33-year-old Armenian, though I believe he has lived and trained out of Russia for quite a while. 9-3 overall, 3-2 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He's coming in off a loss. He fought once this year already. It was back in February at UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Pfeiffer, where he got arm triangled by Rodolfo Vieira. That snapped a 2-fight win streak for him. He'll look to start another one here. He is a moderate underdog in that pursuit. Magomedov is -180, Petrosyan +150. I did not believe in Shara Bullet. He had all the earmarks of a complete hype job. I mean, the look, the crazy like ginger Dagestani with like one bad eye, his Sherdog Fight Finder photo, he was wearing one of the Muay Thai like headgears like the Moncons. He was like 10-0 against the worst competition you could possibly find, and had some fights early in his career that were under kind of like weird, iffy mixed rules where it's worth asking, is it even MMA? Should this count on your MMA record? It looked like a perfect setup for him to come in, win one fight by spectacular knockout, and then fight somebody with a pulse and just get embarrassed. Call it middleweight Rebellis to Spain. Instead, he's turned out to be halfway decent. I mean, there's still no real track to title contention for a guy that can't fight it in North America or Western Europe. I mean, if all you can do is fight once or twice a year in Abu Dhabi, you're going to have a tough time picking up enough momentum to get into the title picture, even at 185. And really, Bruno Silva, a year ago in his UFC debut, might have been the best offensive wrestler he's taken on. Like, but if he wasn't the truth, to some extent, Oleksiejczuk would have shown us. Like, Michal Oleksiejczuk is a very serviceable striker at 185 with underrated power, and not a lot of people have just beaten Oleksiejczuk in straight up striking battles. Magomedov now has. So, yeah, like, I have to backtrack a little bit. He is a serious UFC quality fighter at 185 pounds. So is Petrosyan. Petrosyan is another one that I've kind of underestimated, just because, actually for some of the same reasons, because he had an impressive highlight reel, but was fighting just the worst competition to the point where it was difficult to tell how he'd even do against UFC level fighters based on what he was doing there. But this is a perfect main card opener for the UFC in Abu Dhabi. Petrosyan is one of the middleweights more likely to oblige Sharabulat with a pure striking battle. And while Petrosyan is a good kickboxer in his own right, he's a big guy, strong, athletic, has actual kickboxing experience. Magomedov is faster and more diverse. Like, Magomedov has just turned into a really fun guy to watch fight. Just his arsenal of weird kicks that he's actually managing to land on people. I think this one's going to be a blast. I do favor Magomedov in it. I could see him getting the knockout. Like, Petrosyan does commit defensive lapses on the feet. Nobody's made him pay for it at the UFC level, and that includes fighting like some pretty good strikers, like in Christian Leroy Duncan and even Gregory Rodriguez. I could see Magomedov getting to Petrosyan's chin where those guys didn't, but I think that's the outside chance. I think what we get here is a fun back and forth striking battle where Magomedov is just a little quicker, more active, and more accurate throughout. And I could even see Magomedov pulling ahead late, because I'm not entirely sold on Petrosyan's durability, either his cardio or his resistance to damage. Give me Magomedov to win a decision going away, but this should be a real fun opener for the main card.
I just got a text message from my wife, and I texted her. I asked her to do something while you were talking, and I always say thank you, my love. And I think I was talking to you, so while I'm talking to you, I'm also texting her. So I put thank you, my man. So usually when we do these preview shows, you always ask me the same question, like, oh, besides the main event, what is the fight you're most excited for? And I said before we did the show, like, I'm never prepared, even though we've done like 400 of these shows. I probably should know by now. The one time I was like, oh, dude, this is the fight I'm going to be prepared for. You didn't ask me. So I'm going to answer the question now.
Please do.
This is the fight. This is
all right.
I'm super juiced up for this fight, because I would say Whitaker and Chimaev. I don't want to get excited for that fight, like, I don't think it's gonna happen, you know. But I mean, I do think it's gonna happen, but I'm not getting excited for it. This one is Sharabulat and I'm Petrosyan. Sharabulat, what a character this guy is. Like, I listen, like, some of the shit the guy's done out of the cage made me be a hater. Like, I don't like criminals. Actually, I don't want to say that. It's never personal, but like, I like a society where people don't commit crimes. You know, like, weird. But so I try not to root for him. But then he does so much fun shit in the cage. I'm like, like that guy he blasted at the freaking wall probably deserved it. You know? How dare he love his girlfriend in public?
Honestly, Magomedov has pro wins on his record against people that put up less of a fight. Like,
That's true. That's true.
we're probably going to get some Russian manager trying to claim that it was an MMA fight.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So has Jay put that one in the fight finder?
Yeah.
The one thing about Magomedov, like obviously he's this dynamic striker, but he's also this incredible athlete. He's one of the best athletes in the UFC. I'm so impressed with his speed, his explosion.
Chimaev without the wrestling.
Yeah,
the way he moves. The general body type. Yeah.
He's so fast and big and lanky, and I'm so impressed with his striking. So much variety in his striking, especially his kicking game. I was really blown away with his last fight. He's such a good striker, good at distance. He's super fast, great jab. He counters, his counter right hand is so freaking mean. A mean body shots. He attacks with combination. He's got huge power. He's got 10 TKOs. He starts fast too. He has 7 TKOs in the first round. Again, some of that's fighting bums, but he's so far in the UFC, he's looked good. Incredible kicking game, non-stop kicks too. Like that's what really stood out to me. Creative, mean calf kicks. I love his hook kicks, blasts, body kicks. He will throw some naked leg kicks. He is open to be counted. Some of the best stepping knees I've ever seen. And then he also throw them defensively just to keep his opponent from shooting on him. Like he'll try to time it coming in, which obviously gets you in the air and it helps get a takedown. But if you land that is mean. He's a bad defense wrestler. Like that's how you beat. He doesn't offense wrestle. He's a bad defense wrestler. Go back to the Tricali fight. He grabbed the fence to stop it from getting taken out. And I'm like, good for you, dude. Like, you missed an eye and shit. Like, we're not going to pretend to be like some innocent, like, dude, just grab that fence, pull yourself up. You might as well cheat because the referee's not going to stop you anyways.
Yeah. The referee might be missing both of his eyes. So,
exactly. Better lose.
We've now described like an 80s pro wrestling match, like basically. Yes. Just the villainous looking guy just cheating, the ref not seeing any of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Fuji jumping up in the cage, throwing sand in his eyes and shit. It's better to lose one round than getting taken out and stopped. He used to be helpless in the bottom because he couldn't get up. But now you take him down and he's going to beat the shit out of you when he's on bottom. Like he's striking off his back, landing like these elbows on top of your head over and over again. And he's got good cardio, which is impressive. Like, it's like pick your boys and take him down and eat like 100 elbows to the top of your head or just get pounded on the feet. Petrosian, I've always been a Petrosian guy. Like I really like this guy. He's striking. He's a good striker, good footwork. He moves well. He's explosive. He's elusive. I said it before. He's even though he's a technically sound striker and he's very clean, he surprised me because he circles to his opponent's power, which is so surprising, so unorthodox, which is dangerous against Sharabullah. He's got quick hands. He throws straight shots down the pipe. He has big power. He has 5 TKOs. He's a big kicker. Throws a lot of kicks, good body kicks, good calf kicks. Got a quick high kick. He can use his size and use his Muay Thai style in the clinch. He never wrestles, and he's a terrible defensive wrestler. He does do well to get back to his feet, but he was quickly subbed by Hedaf in his last fight. But we'll give him a pass on that. He's shown he has good cardio to work hard all 15 minutes. This fight is so good. I think both guys are great strikers. Petrosian is the more tactical. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he just is more tactical. He's landing the clean shots. The thing is, even in a striking battle, I think it's going to look like he's going to have to land really clean and really hard because I think it's going to look like he's losing because the viciousness that Magomedov throws and kicks. So it's going to be hard for him to win a decision. I think, unless Magomedov the complete gasses out.
And the crowd is going to be going bananas for everything Magomedov does.
As they should.
as they should. But this in the Apex is going to be like a packed arena on Yas Island.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that adding the volume and the kicks and the viciousness, I think it's going to be too much. I'm a huge Petrosyan guy. I don't know if, I don't pick against him often. I think Magomedov's going to win that big shot. I think he's going to put him out. I think he's going to have one of those huge moments. The crowd's going crazy. Give me Magomedov by second round TKO.
The UFC 308 main card powers on with a light heavyweight contenders matchup between Magomed Ankalaev and Alexander Rakic. Ankalaev, the 32-year-old Dagestani, is 18-1-1 with one no contest overall. He's 10-1-1 with one no contest in the UFC, and having dropped his first fight in the UFC, he is on a 13-fight unbeaten streak since then. He fought most recently back in January in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 234, where he put to bed definitively his brief rivalry with Johnny Walker. Their first fight last October ended in controversy with, in a no contest in the first round. They rematched 4 months later. Ankalaev knocked out Walker in the second round. No controversy needed. So he moves on from there to Rakic. 32-year-old Austrian is 14-4 overall. He's 6-3 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, the first losing streak of any kind of his career. And thanks to an injury sustained in the first of those 2 losses, it stretches back 2.5 years. He lost to Jan Blachowicz back in 2022, May of 2022. Third round knee injury, which it wasn't a random freakish thing like Blachowicz had been doing work on him, but that left him on the shelf for almost 2 full years. He came back this April at UFC 300 and got knocked out by Yuri Prochazka in the second round. So he's looking to bounce back, get out of the loss column. He is not favored to do so. Ankalaev is a whopping -400 favorite, Rakic -300. Depending on how different cookies crumble, this might be a title eliminator, at least if the favorite wins. These, of all the top 15 light heavyweights in the UFC, are the 2 most prone to giving us boring fights. So pitting them against each other, if you were at the Etihad Arena on Yas Island and the main card is starting and you got to pee real bad, wait for this fight probably. It's two huge, technically sound kickboxers who can be conservative and patient to a fault. That's kind of my take on it. Ankalaev is a guy who can wrestle, prefers to strike. He's capable of highlight reel knockouts. The kick that he threw to knock out Dalcha Lungiambula 5 years ago was a thing of beauty, because it wasn't a head kick. It was a front kick that hit him in the head. Just basically threw a snap kick that landed right on Lungiambula's jaw and zapped him. He takes the fight that his opponent gives to him. If his opponent is willing to get touched up from outside and just lose an ugly, boring decision, Ankalaev is not going to step 1 inch out of his comfort zone to try and get the finish. If you come at him, you're running into the wood chipper, and he'll let you run into his fists until you fall down. Just ask Iwan Kudalaba, ask Johnny Walker. And the thing is, Rakic is a guy that is absolutely not going to press the issue against Ankalaev. Rakic is probably even more conservative. He's huge. He's not the fastest light heavyweight, and I think he probably is as deliberate as he is to kind of just as a defensive coping mechanism, because I think especially in the top 10 or top 5 where he was for a minute before his losing streak, just all the other light heavyweights are faster than him. He's got really good kicks, got some of the best leg kicks in the division, and he's perfectly willing to start throwing them to the body. But yeah, this fight, even assuming that Rakic is fully hale and healthy, and Ankalaev's leg kicks aren't going to just saw Rakic off at the knees in the first 8 minutes of the fight, I think Ankalaev wins a decision. I think he probably wins all 3 rounds. I think it's probably kind of miserable to watch. But afterwards, Ankalaev will make big noise on the mic, you know, calling for his title shot. And again, he's going to be in the friendly confines. The people in Abu Dhabi are going to love it, even if the fight is terrible. But yeah, give me Ankalaev by decision in the smoke break fight of the night.
And then the winner might get the headline the next pay-per-view. Or I should say the next pay-per-view, but the next fight could be the headline of a pay-per-view. If Ankalaev loses, who would get the title shot against Fakhretdinov? Assuming Fakhretdinov, you know, next fight is at 205, not middleweight, not heavyweight.
Man, that is a fantastic question.
It has to be. Would it have to be Rakic off a win?
And if Rakic, if Rakic, well, I was gonna say, like, it might be Carlos Ulberg, because Ulberg versus Alex Pereira, there's a little bit of story there as well. He's Adesanya's homie. He himself is a highlight reel kickboxer. He'd talk it up, like.
Wow, I don't know if he talks it up.
He'd do it better than Rakic or Ankalaev for that. It's like, if Rakic gets a title shot off of like his first win in 3.5 years, like, that'd be something. Wow. Now I'm just depressed. Why do you do this to me, Keith?
You know who it'd probably be? Jamal Hill.
He's out. You know what? That's because Hill made some squawks about the way his fight with Alex Pereira ended, and he had a point. Like, I'm not saying it would have turned out any different, but if a fighter that wasn't as awesome and beloved as Alex Pereira just physically shoved the ref out of the way and then went on to punch the guy.
I don't think he shoved the guy.
Well, no, but he like grabbed his hand and like
felony assault against him. I think he like brushed.
He landed a significant strike on Herb Dean. Like,
I think he brushed him back, maybe, and then there was like a whole like sequence. It wasn't like. Yeah. Wasn't like brush it back punch. It was like brush it back. Okay, couple seconds, bounce it around, couple seconds, then bang. You know.
But, again, I'm not saying it would have turned out any different. I'm not even mad at the way it turned out because it was such a cool thing to see. But it's enough that like Hill absolutely would, and the UFC could use it to try and sell the rematch.
I love how Hill's argument is: I made an illegal blow against my opponent, and I should have got more time to be ready for him to hit me after I illegally hit him.
Well, when you put it that way, but yeah, no, that's. I was expecting to get more of a timeout. I would have kicked him in the nuts if you know.
Oh, he should do a split and like friggin'.
Yeah.
Speed bag those balls or something. Give me a speed bag.
I think Johnny Cage did that in the first Mortal Kombat movie. Yeah.
Dude, that's so funny you said that. I played, my son got more, I don't know why. I don't know if this is going to be child abuse. I'll tell you a quick story. My son loves video games. He wanted to get, I guess there was some special sale today, and it was Mortal Kombat 11. I have no idea what this game is, but, and it was $5. I'm like, $5? And I was like, all right, 100 push-ups. So he did 100 push-ups, and then I bought him the game, and then we played, and I beat him. So I'll never play it again.
Oh yeah, like it's never going to get better than that.
Yeah.
But while you're ahead. Meanwhile, his son lost because his arms were all gassed out. He could barely hold the controller.
Yeah, he couldn't move his finger. Like, sucker. That's how much I'd rather talk about the. I was Johnny Cage too. That's why it was funny. No. And he was Baraka. Is that right?
The green,
like monster looking guy.
Yeah, the green monster looking guy. Yeah.
He kept biting my arm. he grabbed my arm and like bite it. Anyways, I wish someone in this fight would bite someone's arm. Ankalaev, I mean, he's really big for weight class. I mean, this is a guy, like, we talk about Kenny Nzechukwu moving up to heavyweight. Like, he can move up to heavyweight, too.
Yeah.
He's, not that they should, but he's well-rounded. He's a southpaw that is, technically sound striker, marches down his foe with technical strikes. But for a guy who's big, he lacks one punch knockout power. I mean, it's more of a point for him. I know you can mention, like, Johnny Walker and these knockouts, but
yeah.
My point is,
dude, his best highlight reel knockout was over like a 5'11" light heavyweight who didn't really belong in the UFC and
there you go. Yeah. I mean, he has some power, so don't get me wrong, but he's got a great jab. He uses it to set up his power shots. I like his body work. He dropped Johnny Walker with a body shot. But for a guy who's a technical striker, he's still very hittable. He keeps his chin really high in the air. He's got a good kicking game, nice teep kicks, got a great quick high kick. I mean, go back to that fight where against Ian Quintalaba where he's throwing high kicks at him. He never checks leg kicks, so go back to the title fight against John Boholic, which was beating his legs up. Even Johnny Walker in the fight that he won was having success early with kicks. You mentioned, like, he has no issue of being boring. He doesn't mind closing distance, grinding in the clinch, using his size well in the clinch. He has zero issue with, clinching and having the entire arena boo, which won't be the case in Abu Dhabi, but like if he was in, America, he doesn't care. He's got good head position in there, trying to frustrate his opponent, tiring them down. Suddenly he'll drop down on the legs and pull his legs out. The big thing that everyone says about Ankalaev, Ankalaev can wrestle. That's why he's the guy to Alex Behead most should be feared of. He can wrestle, and this is not me like making a prediction on that fight. Like, this is a long ways away if it does happen. But I think his wrestling's overrated. He's not exploding through your hips. He's got, like, I think Glover Teixeira is a prime Glover Teixeira is just as good at wrestling, and most people, when they call Glover Teixeira, like a wrestler. Like, he had that great single leg, but you get my point.
Yeah.
He's got good top control, though. If he gets on top, he is the way he controls on top. Like, he has, again, no issues with stalling on top. He is hard to take down himself, but he's not much of a submission threat. Rakic is a good striker. He can fight on both stances. He's a definition of an outfighter. He likes to work from distance. He has that wide open stance that he uses his lead left hand to gauge the distance. He has his other hand cocked and ready to explode. Does a lot of measuring. Works behind a jab. From the southpaw, he'll switch stances. But from the southpaw, he throws hard kicks down the pipe. He's good at pulling his opponents into his shots by kind of backing up, having them chase him a little bit, and then kind of suddenly stopping and then meeting them at the point of contact. He isn't also like Ankalaev. He isn't a one-punch fight ending striker. He's got good calf kicks. I mean, go back to the Anthony Smith fight. That was one that he really displayed that. He was actually beat Prohaska with calf kicks in their fight before Prohaska caught him. The problem is he should have stick to the outside game and movement. He played with fire too much by continuing trying to hold the ground and slug it out at times with Prohaska. And Prohaska is not the guy you stand in the pocket and slug it out with. He can wrestle, but he doesn't look for it much. He completely abandoned his wrestling against Anthony Smith. Though I think he's an underrated grappler overall, though he only has one submission win. And I'm worried about his chin after being knocked out by Prohaska. It's been a while ago, but still something to worry about. I think this line is way off. I can't believe that Ankalaev is this big a favorite. I think it should be much closer. To me, Ankalaev is too hittable to be this big of a favorite. I think we get a back and forth fight. I think it's going to be low. I think, like you said, I think there's a lot of feeling out. I think Rakic could win a round. Can he win 2 rounds is the question. I really want to take the upset, but I keep thinking about Ankalaev's jabs, those kicks, the threats of takedown. If there's a takedown, it would probably be Ankalaev. I think that little bit edges him a very, very close split decision. Give me Nickal for a split decision.
Next up on the UFC 308 main card, Keith, if the UFC still did taglines for their numbered pay-per-view events, if they still called them bitter rivals or, whatever, this would be UFC 308 undefeated versus awesome. Because the top 3 fights on this card feature 3 undefeated fighters against 3 of the most beloved
nice
fighters.
job.
Yeah.
That's a nice one, man. Good job.
And it's nothing against, it's not like Ilia Topuria has no fans. Like if he beats Max Holloway in the main event in uncontroversial fashion, he's probably Sherdog's fighter of the year. It's either him or Alex Pereira. Khamzat Chimaev, he has haters, he has fans, but he's one of the most talked about fighters in the sport. So I'm not saying that it's awesome fighters against fighters that nobody likes or are anonymous, except in this one where it's Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Let's get this one out of the way. Third from the top at UFC 308 is a featherweight clash between the undefeated Lerone Murphy and Dan Ige, who is not undefeated, but is having quite a year for himself anyway. Murphy, the 33-year-old Brit, is 14-0-1 overall. He's 6-0-1 in the UFC, and after a split draw in his UFC debut, he has rattled off 6 straight wins. He's fought once already this year, taking a unanimous decision over Edson Barboza in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 241 back in May. So he'll look for his second win of this calendar year against Ige. 33-year-old Hawaiian by way of Las Vegas is 18-8 overall. He is 10-7 since joining the UFC out of the very first season of Dana White's Contender Series. He's already fought twice this year. He knocked out Andre Fili in February. Then in one of the more remarkable, unprecedented moments in UFC history, one that we probably will never see again, he fought at UFC 303 in June, stepping up on same-day notice, literally weighing in after the event had already started to appear opposite Diego Lopez in a either 160, 165-pound catchweight match. I forget which it was, but he came out on the wrong end of a unanimous decision, but it was a hell of a fight nonetheless, and just sort of took Ige from one of the recognized action stars of his era in the UFC to something more approaching legendary. Like, I don't know if Dan Ige is legendary, but I have the feeling that fight's going in the UFC fight wing of the Hall of Fame while Ige is still on roster. Like, it's the kind of thing that the UFC loves to praise and lionize fighters for, just willingness to step up anyone, anytime. Dan Ige has now done it. Anyway, Ige would love to show up on a full camp and hand Murphy the first loss of his career. He is not favored to do so, as Murphy is minus 235, Ige plus 195, so almost a full 2-1 underdog here. Keith, I'm gonna flip this to you. I joked a little bit that Topuria and Chimaev have fans while Murphy doesn't, but I'm not completely kidding. I mean, there's a reason that nobody is beating the drum for this guy to get a featherweight title shot, and there's 2 reasons. One, he has like 7 fights in 5 years. The traffic's just moving too fast, even if you do win all your fights. And then 2, even when he does win, it isn't always the prettiest to watch. And at featherweight, I feel like fans, feel they deserve better than that. Tell me if you think Murphy takes one more step towards a title shot here, or Ige just cements his legend even further. Like, what happens?
Well, as far as his legacies go, Dan Ige should never have to buy a beer at an MMA event ever. Like, you know what I mean? Or I don't know, maybe you shouldn't have to pay taxes, something like, the guy's a friggin' American hero. Yeah. That's still one of the craziest. You talk about like baddest MFers. Dan Ige, like, he should have his own category. That was incredible. And Diego Lopez too. Because he waited 2 times, 2 different weight classes. Like, that guy's the man too. Like, let's not forget about that.
And Lopez is a guy that was in the no-win situation, really.
Exactly. If he lost, it would have been like, I mean, you want the guy
or if he'd refused the fight, Ige looks like a hero, and Lopez looks like a sissy. Even though that would be a perfectly reasonable thing. Be like, I don't want to fight a dangerous fighter on 1 hour's notice. But
absolutely.
Both.
He had everything to lose, nothing to gain. He had to smash him, or everything. And then, mind you, this is a guy who sucked all the weight down to 145, and then what was it? Was it like 165 or something?
Yeah, 160 or 165. I can't remember which it was.
That,
Lopez was cruising towards a title shot. I mean, he still is because he beat Ige.
I think he should get a fast track for it. I mean, Danny Ige. I mean, I was a fan before that with Danny Ige, and then that I was like, I remember telling my wife, we were in Vermont, and she was like about to go to bed. We drove up. It was a different. They went there, and I'm like, this is like I remember like telling her before we go to bed, like, this is crazy. I've watched MMA for practically my whole life, and I've never seen anything like this. But Ige, I mean, he's a well-rounded guy. He's a pressure striker with high output. He's accurate. He loves to get in the pocket and unload big shot with nice tight boxing, high guard defense. He likes to counter right hand, the left hook combination. I love how he battered Damian Jackson's body. He has good power for the weight class. I mean, you go back, like his knockout at Damian Jackson, it was one of the most beautiful knockouts I've ever seen, especially in the lower weight classes. Good kicking game. He loves like flying knees to close the distance. He's a solid wrestler, good at winning, good at wrestling when his opponents are open up striking, like timing. Like he's not a credentialed wrestler, but he just got a good feel for it. He does need to improve his takedown defense. I'd say he's an overall good grappler. He's got a strong top game. He's got mean ground and pound. He's got busy ground and pound on top. He has cardio to go all 15 minutes. The problem is you say what you want about Ige. These BMF guys, they've taken incredible amount of damage. I mean, he's taken over Edson Barbosa, Calvin Kattar, Diego Lopez, Mosar Leviev, Josh Emmett, Chance Lang Jr. Like he's fought in wars against people, taking so much damage. So that's always concerning. And then on the flip side, how about rewarding this guy? How about giving him a name that's easy to beat? You give him the guy who in the division that doesn't have the biggest name, but it might be the hardest one to beat. You gave him like the complete opposite of what a guy who steps up like that should have got. Lerone Murphy, he's a good athlete. He moves well. He flows between stances really well. He's a good striker, technically sound, sets up his shots well with feints, fights with a lot of pressure. Showed in the last fight, good volume. Defensively, he's very, Bobby Green style, where he's shoulder rolling to avoid shots. He fights behind a good jab. He doubles it up at times. He's accurate. He tends to hold back his power and kind of just touch until there's an opening, and then that's when he unloads big shots. He works the body well. He's extremely intelligent. I love this one where he was against Americani, where he was feinting and then he was feinting trying to draw out the attack from Americani, and then he throws a knee up the middle, which is just beautiful knockout. It's such intelligent move. Good kicking game. Blast the body with kicks, especially from the opposites. If you're opposite stance from him, mean calf kicks. He's a solid wrestler. He almost caught Tukhugov in a guillotine, which was impressive. He doesn't have a submission in his career, which is a little concerning. If he's on top, though, he's got good ground and pound, good control. I mean, he knocked out Ricardo Ramos with ground and pound. His takedown defense has been an issue in the past, and some of that has to do with him pillaring, which you cover up like this, you're leaving your body, your hips open to be exposed. And when he's been taken down, he couldn't get off the bottom against Tukhugov, and Americani had success early. But he showed a much better get-up game when he went against Gabriel Santos. And he showed really good cardio in his last fight. I'm a big Danny Ige guy. I mean, who isn't? But they did him dirty. This is the passing of the torch fight. Murphy is really coming into his own. I expect him to jab and to kick Danny Ige up. I think he'll get some takedowns. I think Murphy wins in a lopsided decision.
Yeah, not much I can add to that, like, let alone contradict. And the thing is, you and I, and I'm sure plenty of other people are like, oh man, like, why are they doing this to Ige? And the one person who will never make a peep about it is Ige himself. Like, I'm sure he doesn't even approach it that way. I've interviewed Ige multiple times, just early on in my run at Sherdog. He was working for Ali Abdelaziz. So, like, outside of his fight career, he was making some money just doing work for Ali Abdelaziz, and he would arrange interviews for me with other of Ali's fighters. And finally I was like, dude, you're 2 fights in from the Contender Series. You just had a great win. Like, can I interview you? Like, can we talk for a few minutes? And I've interviewed him a couple times since then. Yeah, just super good dude. And I mean, you kind of alluded to this earlier. I think we were talking about Charbel.
Yeah.
Like, in the cage, it doesn't matter. Like, once the cage door shuts, if one guy is a felon, if one guy is a volunteer wrestling coach and a happily married father of 5, none of that matters once the cage door shuts. But before and after, like, it's nice to have people that you can root for, and they're never going to make you, like, embarrassed that you rooted for them. Like, Dan Ige is one of those dudes. So are Robert Whittaker and Max Holloway that we'll be talking about next.
I'm gonna get so much hate for this. like someone's gonna be, oh, dude, let it go. I remember being in Buffalo, New York, and DC was fighting Anthony Rumble Johnson. The whole entire crowd was on Rumble's side because DC touched the towel, and I'm just sitting there thinking, what fucking world is a guy who's the, a champion in the UFC, megastar, volunteering his time to coach a football team, who's also his kid died in a car accident and his dad was murdered, getting booed for a serial domestic violence abuser.
Yeah,
and I was like the only person in attendance, like, rooting for DC. This is before I was listening to Arc and stuff,
but no.
Right now, right away, I'm like, oh my god, dude, how could you possibly say something negative about Anthony Rumble Johnson? Like, I didn't call him Hitler, but he was a bad dude.
Yeah.
Sorry to bring that.
As far as the fight goes, yeah, Murphy's the favorite, and I'm thinking, what are plausible routes to victory for Ige? And they're all just very unlikely. Ige does hit hard, and he throws good volume. He's aggressive. He puts himself in positions to get his fist on the other guy's chin, but Murphy is bigger, rangier, good at dictating distance. He's so patient. You mentioned he's so intelligent. Ige is far from a sloppy brawler. Like, he's a well-schooled striker who just happens to be the aggressive type. But nonetheless, I think, I don't think Murphy's going to pitch a literal no-hitter on Ige, but I think it's going to feel like that sometimes. Just Ige charging in, getting sidestepped, pot-shotted on his way, like, through where the phone booth was like a second ago. I could see Murphy pulling Ige onto his counters like he did to Makwan Amirkhani. Ironically, I think, if Ige timed some takedowns nicely, he could take Murphy down, do some work there. But even there, I can't picture Ige getting takedowns on a consistent enough basis to have the fight hinge on it. I agree that this is just a bad matchup for Ige. I mean, Murphy really is a bad matchup for almost everybody. The thing that's held him back in his UFC run so far is that he has, again, like 7 fights in 5 years. He just keeps disappearing. Give me Murphy to win a lopsided decision here. If the people that have fought Ige already haven't finished him, I don't think Murphy's going to be the first. But yeah, I think this will feel like a no-hitter at times. And while punch stats don't matter and shouldn't sway the judges, I think the punch stats are going to be gaudy on this one. It's going to be one of those things where, like, Ige is 22 for 160 and Murphy's like hitting more than half of his significant strikes, stuff like that. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC 308, a middleweight contenders fight between former champ Robert Whittaker and undefeated, not prospect anymore, undefeated contender, the mystifying Khamzat Chimaev. Whittaker, 33-year-old New Zealander now residing in Australia. 26-7 overall, 17-5 since joining the UFC out of tough smashes, UK versus Australia. He is 17-5 in the UFC. He is 14-3 since moving up to middleweight, a run that saw him, of course, capture the interim title and then be promoted to undisputed champ. He lost that title, but has remained in the title picture, separating the wheat from the chaff ever since. He's on a 2-fight win streak since his loss to Dricus du Plessis last summer. He took a unanimous decision over Paulo Costa at UFC 298 in February, and then made Ikram Aliskerov look frankly amateurish and outmatched in the headliner of UFC on ABC 6 in June. So he's looking for his third straight win. He is looking to claw his way back to maybe one more shot at the title. And in order to do so, he is taking a fight against the guy that nobody wants to fight. That would be Chimaev. 30-year-old Chechen by way of Sweden is a perfect 13-0 as a professional. He's a perfect 7-0 since hitting the UFC like a bolt of lightning in the summer of 2020. He was the breakout star of that COVID year, just showing up halfway through the year, rattling off 3 wins in, at the time, record time, knocking people out, choking them out, lightning speed. Things have slowed down since then, not because people are giving him that much more of a challenge, but mostly just because he keeps disappearing. He caught COVID in 2021, and while he was probably speaking out of a place of frustration, he got sick enough that he declared his retirement and didn't undeclare it for several months. He's had some injuries. And then, of course, most infamously, a little over a year ago at UFC, or a little over 2 years ago at UFC 279, he showed up 10 pounds overweight through the entire main card of that pay-per-view into disarray and kind of laughed the whole thing off. He put that in the rear view a year ago at UFC 294, showing back up and taking a majority decision over former welterweight champ Kamaru Usman. But really, as one of the more dominant fighters in the organization and one of its bigger stars, everything's just sort of been waiting for him to show up to 3 fights in a year and beat the right guys. And he's probably in the title picture. This is it. And he is favored to get it done. Chimaev is minus 225, Whitaker plus 185. Keith,
that's surprising.
In Whitaker's entire run at 185 pounds, he has lost to Israel Adesanya twice, and he has lost to Dricus du Plessis. And most of the other people that he's fought, he's kind of handled. The odds makers, at least, or the bettors who drive their lines.
Well, Romero fights were close.
Yeah,
I don't say handle them, but yeah.
Okay, no, the Romero fights were close. We're
going back. We're going way back now.
Yeah, we're going back to before the Adesanya fight.
Yeah.
But because he lost so,
and I think his fight was close.
Yeah, I mean, I still think he lost it, obviously, but
yeah.
he made great adjustments. No, you kind of helped me make the point there, because it's since his first loss to Adesanya, which was basically exactly 5 years ago, where Adesanya just beat him so bad. I feel as though on some level, Whitaker's just having to remind us every time out who he is since that fight. Like, just as recently as the Aliskerov fight earlier this year, like this summer, there were people that watched, and that was close to a pick'em by the time they hit the cage. And you and I were both like, Whitaker's going to make Aliskerov look silly. And we're not right all the time. We're not geniuses about it.
No. I picked Aliskerov. I was stupid.
Oh, okay. I'm a genius. But there you go. Even people that watch every single UFC fight, Whitaker's got to remind us sometimes, yeah, just because Israel Adesanya did that to me doesn't mean you can. I'm flipping this to you, but are we in for another one of those moments? Is he going to make Chimaev look amateurish? Like,
if anybody in the division could, this is the guy. the thing about Chimaev is his talent is through the roof. It's everything else. And I mean, Whitaker's always. I mean, obviously he's a super talented guy. I mean, become the UFC middleweight champion of the world without being, and then have title defense on top of it, and then work your way back to a title shot and almost win. And really, I mean, probably wins this one. He's fighting for the title. So. Dude, it's funny you talk about like good guys. I mean, who's a better guy than Robert Whitaker?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you not be a fan of Robert Whitaker? The he's a well-rounded fighter. He's a good striker. Definitely like more of a technical striker than a power puncher. But he works behind a great jab. I mean, everything comes off of that. He likes to double it up. He defends attacks by holding his ground with a jab. Like he doesn't back down. He does the same thing with his overhand right. He uses overhand right to keep him at bay. Wings it at his opponents. He also tries to time his opponent's attack and beating him at the point of contact. He's and that's one of his strengths has been being able to pick up his opponent's timing and rhythm. I go to like the Cannonier fight and the Vittori fight are two recent examples where you just beat out at the point of contact. He picked up Aliscara's timing like pretty quickly in that fight, which was really impressive. And then even like the Costa fight, like at first he did it, but about midway through the fight, he picked up Costa's timing and then was piecing out for the rest of the fight. He's also good at changing his own rhythm and his own timing, so his opponent doesn't pick that up. He's good at disguising his attacks. I've said that before. Like he likes to like fake to the body and then come over the top of the jab, or like he'll kind of like half throw a jab to get his opponent's hands up, and then he wraps. He'll throw it to get your hands up, and then just wraps it around the defense. Like kind of like the jab becomes a hook. He's actually one of the guys who's pretty sound defensively, good at slipping and ripping. Has historically had some of the best head movement in the game. That's why he's able to slip and then land that like really big left hook, because he keeps himself in the range. He's good at misdirecting where the shots are going. He loves, I've said before, he loves to dart one direction and then tack on the other side. I've credited guys who will dip to one way and they'll throw a high kick on the other side. I've always called it the Robert Whitaker high kick. He's got he had Alex Garrett for the incredible uppercut. I said earlier that he's more of a technical striker than a power striker, but he's deceiving with his power because he's undersized. You don't think of him as this big power puncher in the division, but he's shown recently that he can crack, and he can be unorthodox. Like he loves those John Jones side kicks to the obliques. He's got great calf kicks. He tends to generate power because he's very heavy on his front foot, very boxing style. But it also leaves him vulnerable to leg kicks. And he does lunge at times and overextend. Being a small middleweight, he does well in the clinch, which is surprising that he's small. I should have said that he does well in the clinch. Good mean close distance striking, elbows inside. His biggest weakness, I've said this before, but on the pass is, and this would cost him the first fight against Adesanya. He always tries to even the score. Like if he gets blasted, he'll chase in trying to land a big shot, and then that's what Izzy put him down with. Though he did much better against Costa. He played the long game against Costa. He's a good wrestler, and what I like about it is that he's been using his wrestling more recently, which just opens up his avenues for victory. Though I doubt he wrestles with Chimaev, but it could be something he wrestles later if Chimaev ties out. And then he's always had incredible takedown defense. I mean, it's I hate to keep mentioning it because it was forever ago, but really impressive that he was stopped takedowns against Yoel Romero with no ACL in his knee. Though he did give up a takedown to Dracus du Plessis. But I think the takedown to du Plessis had less to do with Whitaker's takedown defense and more to do with just du Plessis' unmatched pressure that nobody's been able to fight like him. If Whitaker gets on top, he's got a pretty good top game and good ground and pound. Chimaev, this dude, he's a huge middleweight. And then, how the hell did he used to fight at welterweight? And then remember he was gonna go back and forth. That was the first goal of being a champion in both weight classes and defending.
And He might still be a 2-division champ one day, but one of them isn't going to be 170.
No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. like if he fought at light heavyweight, like that would shock me. You know, he's well rounded. What I've said about him when you've seen him fight in the past is he's absolutely fearless. He just walks down his opponent. He doesn't care if he gets hit. It's pretty remarkable thing. He throws hard, he throws fast, and he clean shots down the plate. He's got huge power. I mean, look like he just grabbed Reese McKee and just threw him like a child, like he was like a little child. He threw Gilbert Burns. I mean, he's long and lengthy in his striking, and his wrestling is, you know, he's an incredible wrestler, incredible MMA wrestler, and I want to categorize that because I got a debate once with like idiots on the internet, which is a shame on me for doing this, but people on Twitter who don't follow wrestling, it was like, you know, when Bo Nickal mentioned like a wrestling match in Shemaev, and be like, oh, Shemaev would kill him, and I'm like, well, in MMA, maybe you can make an argument Shemaev would kill Bo Nickal, but in a straight wrestling match, it would be Bo Nickal would pin him in 20 seconds. Like he wouldn't make it past the first minute. But it's because idiots look at MMA and they just think like pushing somebody against the cage and pulling the leg. That's not like there's a whole ground game of wrestling and referee's position and scrambles and all the shit that people don't know about, and you know, tilts and shit. Like talk to the average MMA fan what a tilt is. They have no idea what you're talking about. And no, should they? But my point is like it's stupid. It's the people who saw Tyreek Hill run fast and be like, dude, he's super fast. Like he's probably faster than Usain Bolt. It's like no, he's not. Like,
nope, he's not.
That's silly. Like that's the equivalent. I mean, Bo Nickal was up to Usain Bolt of wrestling, but you get my point. Like, you know, someone who's really good at track, or he's got great. But anyways, that's it. I want to talk about how impressive Shemaev's wrestling is. So, like his MMA wrestling is still really impressive. He's got great entries. He uses his long arms. Like you could sprawl on him, but he doesn't care. Like as long as he gets his arms around you, he'll get you your legs. He chain wrestles his attacks well together. I go back to the Kevin Holland fight where there wasn't much, like, you know, Shemaev took him down and control him pretty quickly, but there was some Granby rolls and stuff where you were just following the hips. It was pretty impressive. And he's got good top control. He likes that like Habib, Dagestan handcuff. He advanced position on the ground against Usman. He's got hard ground. And, don't say, Usman was a wrestler. Usman was nowhere near Bo Nickal's level wrestling. But anyways, hard ground. He's got hard ground pound. He's got a really good submission game. He's got 5 subs. I mean, he caught Kevin Holland, who's a pretty good grappler himself. He caught him in a Darce choke. He did gas against Usman, and that's the concern. He still won the fight, but his volume really dropped between the second and third round. And what you say the line was like? Shemaev was like
minus 225. That's
surprising. It being, I thought the line would be like almost a pick 'em, or maybe even Whittaker could be the favorite because he's been active and winning, and we haven't seen Shemaev. And then a lot of people thought the performance against Usman, who was taking the fight, you know, on very short notice, was not a good showing.
Yeah,
this is a hard fight to pick because when I picked against Whittaker, it wasn't this big thing about Oscar. It was more like I thought maybe Whittaker might begin to fade. But his last performance showed that he's still the man, you know. And Shemaev is as talented as anybody in the UFC. Like his talent is up there. Like you say what you want, like can Shemaev become a champion? Like we've done this for King. Absolutely. Like I mean, his skill set is that good. He's been so inconsistent getting in the cage, and that weight cut and drains him, and that wrestle heavy style drains him. And you got a guy like Whittaker who's going to be really tough to wrestle. So it comes down to like Shemaev's skills, the lack of intangibles that he has compared to Whittaker, who obviously he has skills, but he's like the ultimate intangible guy. You know what I mean? Like he's the guy that is, you know, as mentally strong as anybody we've ever seen fight. I mean, when you blow your knee out and you can still, you know, win the title against Yoel Romero is as mental fortitude we've seen in the sport ever, you know, in incredible fights. If this was a 5-round fight, I would definitely like Whitaker's.
Keith, it is a 5-round fight.
Oh, this is a 5-round fight. Oh my God. What the fuck is mad with me? I didn't realize that. Oh man. That changes a lot.
Tell me about it.
That changes a lot, dude. I'm gonna change my pick on the fly.
It's unanimous.
No, I'm not gonna do it. I don't know what I'm gonna do because don't even leave this in. So one thing I've always said, and this is the rule, and I feel like I broke a record with that. Like I say it all the time, but like I forget what fight it was. Someone commented the other day, like, "Well, that was a 5-round fight. This guy won." I'm like, "Well, people fight differently in 5-round fights than they do 3-round fights.
They prepare differently. Like it's different for 4 months leading up. Yeah,
it's like the guy who like he runs the 100-meter sprint, and he like when he hits the line, he like bends over, and you're like, "Well, if that was 200 meters, he would have won." Like, you run differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, or if that was a 400 meter, like, well, he wouldn't be a full sprinter, or you know, damn. I think Chimaev's going to hurt Whitaker early. You know, man, I'm really torn now. Oh man, can I pass? Can you go first? I was taking Chimaev. I would say that I think he hurts Whitaker early. That he was going to win 2 rounds, maybe beat him up some ground and pound, get a big lead, and then Whitaker would come back and have success sleep and run out of time. Being that it's 5 rounds, you know, I'm still going to say I'm still taking Chimaev. Weird things happen in other countries. And it's like his home area, kind of not home area, but you get my point. Like hometown crowd, and yeah. Give me Chimaev. I'm saying by split decision. I have 0. I'm like my confidence level. Like I didn't have a lot of confidence before. You added 2 more extra rounds. I forgot about. It makes my confidence even less. I almost switched on the fly to Whitaker.
It's
just a gap in skill set. It's just a gap in skill set. To me, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Whitaker obviously has incredible skill set, but like Chimaev's skill set just jumps off the page. It's like when you go against somebody like if Whitaker beats Chimaev, I go, okay. Like, yeah, all right. He outlasted him. But if Chimaev just runs right through Whitaker, Chimaev stops him in the first round, I go like, well, no, why would I pick against him? What a stupid pick. Like that's where I'm going. Yeah. It's betting against Patrick Mahomes. Like, why would you do that?
I get it, man. Like, and my pick here hinges on Whitaker making it to the championship round. So if Chimaev crumples him into a little ball and throws him into the 5th row in 3 minutes, well, there goes my pick. But I'll agree with you. I mean, well, I agree with you on 95% of what you said, and just we may be different in where it's going to come out. But Chimaev is one of the most naturally talented fighters ever to come through mixed martial arts. Like it's just, and obviously he has developed skills to go with his athletic talents. Like he didn't just wake up one morning able to wrestle like that. He didn't just wake up one morning with that hand speed and power, but yeah, his physical attributes just unbelievable. Even at 185 pounds, he's just incredibly strong, incredibly fast, smooth, coordinated. Like he's not like from a striking standpoint, from like diversity of striking arsenal, he's not Israel Adesanya or Alex Pereira or hell, even Robert Whitaker. Like what Chimaev is someone who comes forward, starts throwing immediately, and like throws in combination and throws straight punches. It just makes good use, because he already is like a tall, big framed guy, but he has long reach and he throws long straight punches that are fast and accurate and just have monstrous power. huge kicking power as well. And then while we've already had the definitive explanation of why he is not Bo Nickal, he is a good technical wrestler on the things he does. Like his physical diesel makes them go, but he has good entries. And you mentioned that when people even are able to sprawl or, it's against the fence, they start wide legging. Same as with his striking, he makes the best use of his physical gifts. He's a tall guy with actually kind of narrow shoulders, but long arms, and he's able to lock his hands around people that think they have sprawled properly. It's got to be terrifying. But if there's somebody in that division that's not going to be shaken or taken out of his game by that is still going to be trying to make adjustments from round to round, Whittaker, Whittaker is one of them. I think a lot of it will come down to the wrestling. Like, how easy of a time does Chimaev have? Like, is Chimaev just able to body him like he did welterweights, like, Reese McKee and even Gilbert Burns, who normally is a very, very solid wrestler? Like, if he's ragdolling Whittaker around the cage in the first round, that's concerning. But unless he does fight-altering damage to Whittaker in the first 7 or 8 minutes, even if Whittaker loses a 10-8 first round, even if Whittaker loses the first and second, I'm not feeling great if I'm in Chimaev's corner. He's shown gas problems in 3-round fights. I've seen Whittaker beat up and hurt, but I haven't seen Whittaker especially tired even in 5-round fights, and he's been in 10 5-round fights at this point. Again, this pick might look real silly if Chimaev just punts Whittaker in the first round, but give me Whittaker to survive the early onslaught, for Chimaev to get tired, and for Whittaker to pull ahead late. And even though this is Etihad Arena and they're going to be going ham not going ham because nobody in that arena eats ham, but getting very enthusiastic for Chimaev early on. Yeah, watch for the cheers to turn towards Whittaker, Rocky IV style, as he takes over in the 4th and 5th rounds. And I'm going to say he gets a decision here, but if Chimaev is that tired and that discouraged late and Whittaker really turns up the jets, it'd be something if Chimaev's first loss came by TKO or something. But I got Whittaker by decision in the fairly substantial upset here. With that, we come to the main event of UFC 308, a featherweight title fight between the champ, undefeated Ilia Topuria, and the challenger, former champ Max Holloway. Topuria, the 27-year-old Spaniard of Georgian descent, is a perfect 15-0 as a professional. He is a perfect 7-0 in the UFC. He is your sitting champ, having won the title at UFC 298 in February with a brutal knockout of Alexander Volkanovski, one of the people in the GOAT conversation in this division. But Topuria made quick work of him. He's been on the shelf ever since, but been in the public eye, been on the mic, been making some noise to the extent it is possible to try to pick a fight with Max Holloway across the mic. He certainly tried to. Holloway, 32-year-old Hawaiian, 26-7 overall, 22-7 since joining the UFC as I think 19-year-old. He is, of course, the former featherweight champ. He is a former lightweight title challenger. He is the owner of a shiny BMF belt. He's got all the hardware. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Dating back to last April, he has a decision win over Arnold Allen at featherweight. He has a 3rd-round knockout of Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, at featherweight. And at UFC 300 this April, he finished another level of his legend, as if he needed any more, by taking on Justin Gaethje at lightweight for the BMF belt. And it was already a fight of the year candidate at an event of the year candidate. And then with about 15 seconds left in the fight, Holloway stands in the center of the octagon, points to the ground, and a guy who the only possible knock against him at featherweight is a lack of one-shot power, one shot at Justin Gaethje with 1 second left in the fight. One of the most insane things I have ever seen happen in this sport. And yeah, that's his work so far this year. He is, he's coming for the title. He's saying all the right things. He is an underdog. Topuria is minus 230, Holloway plus 190. Keith, this is as good as it gets, man. I don't know if this is the fight I've been most excited for this year, but it's in the top 3.
Which is why. How do you explain those odds? Like Max Holloway at plus 190. Like he shouldn't be a plus 190 underdog to anybody. Like you could get freaking He-Man out here, and I'm not giving him. You know, they get Thor out here and have him fighting freaking wherever country Thor was from. Like, that's crazy. I was wondering who the favorite was. Never mind, 2-1 underdog. Wow, I'm surprised.
On some level, I get it. You know, we've talked many times, having a 0 in the loss column. It's hard for people, and myself included, to envision something happening that we haven't seen happen yet. You know, like
I'm not surprised that Topuria is the favorite,
but 2-1,
like
greater than 2-1. Yeah, it's
like I was wondering who was going to be the favorite based on one guy's undefeated and he just coming off the best, obviously the best one of his career, beating Volkanovski, and then Holloway having the huge moment. I was like, I wonder who the favorite is. That's crazy to me. But hey, what the hell do I know?
It is. I felt the same way. Topuria, a few of the things that I just finished saying about Khamzat Chimaev go for Topuria. Like the one thing he doesn't have going for him that Chimaev does is Topuria is not big for the division. But beyond that, I mean, he is an incredible athlete, and he is one of those guys that is very good at every single aspect of MMA. Like he's a crisp boxer with, I think I said this about Jeff Neal, huge power, and power that comes not from overswinging, but just from being a strong, athletic guy with solid technique. He's a very good wrestler. He is an outstanding grappler, and he's the type of outstanding grappler that, if it comes to it, makes other outstanding grapplers look silly. Like, of course, Topuria was a huge favorite over Ryan Hall when they fought a couple years ago, but there's a difference between I can beat Ryan Hall and I'm just going to dive right into Ryan Hall's world and knock the shit out of him and have no fear of one of the most unorthodox and like freakishly opportunistic like grapplers in MMA history. Bryce Mitchell, like even though Bryce Mitchell is, one of the best grapplers in the UFC and physically quite a bit larger than me, I'm going to dump him on his head. I'm going to maul him on the ground. He's not going to get a second of offense, and I'm going to tap him out with like a heavyweight style topside arm triangle choke. I understand, like, even if I don't agree with it, I understand why Topuria is such a favorite, because it's not just that he's undefeated. He's just trashed just about everybody he's fought, whether forcing them onto his terms or just going right into their world and beating them at their own game. When I think of fighters that have done similar things on the way up, you go to John Jones, where John Jones would just go ahead and beat people at their own game, just almost trying to prove things to himself. I'll just stand and exchange leg kicks with Thiago Santos. I'll take down Daniel Cormier just to show that I can. Like Topuria's got that kind of thing going on. But having said that, Topuria's had one fight. Well, I mean, he's only had 2 fights in his entire career go to the 3rd round, and he's only had 1 go past the 3rd round. And in both cases, he was in the driver's seat the entire time. And, we've both said this plenty of times. It's something I come back to. Almost everybody at a high level in MMA has 3 rounds of cardio if they're dictating the pace. If someone else is putting the pace on them and making them move when they don't want to, it's a whole different thing. I'm not saying that Topuria couldn't knock out Holloway early or take him down and just run roughshod over him on the ground, but nobody else has.
Yeah.
And Holloway has spent half of his life at this point in the best organization in the world, fighting the best fighters in the world, including a lot of the best strikers and hardest hitters pound for pound. I mean, if he chewed through Jose Aldo twice, Dustin Poirier twice, Alexander Volkanovski 3 times, Conor McGregor once, even if McGregor mostly wrestled him, and none of those guys even came close to knocking him out. Like, it's only been a few times that we've even seen Max Holloway badly hurt. Max Holloway looks more rocked the day before weigh-ins than he does at the end of a fight.
That's right.
If Topuria's the truth to the point that he just gets Holloway out of there inside of 2 rounds in a way that we've never seen anybody do, more power to him, and he'll have my vote for number 1 pound for pound fighter in the sport. As far as I'm concerned, he leapfrogs Islam Makhachev if he just trashes Holloway in a way that we've never seen anyone else do. But if he doesn't, man, fighting Max Holloway is just hellish, because he's a high volume striker who gets higher and higher in volume as it goes along. He's a guy that, you know, I've said this about a few people, Bilal Muhammad, Anthony Hernandez that we just saw fight, where as good as he was early on, we only realized later on that this was a guy built for 5-round fights. Like, Anthony Hernandez is built for 5-round fights. It's going to be a fun ride from here on out. Holloway, yeah, as soon as Holloway moved up to 5-round fights, he became real hard to deal with. I'm feeling the upset here, man. And kind of like I said about the co-main, about Whitaker versus Chimaev, if Topuria dusts Holloway in the first 10 minutes of this fight, then, hey, I picked wrong. Topuria is even better than I thought. Or maybe Holloway, as the oldest 32-year-old in the game, is finally showing some cracks. But if Topuria doesn't destroy Holloway in the first 2 rounds, Holloway's still going to be there, jabbing him up, throwing the jab, throwing the cross, switching stances, moving forward, like throwing his kicks up the middle. Just the guy, I mean, it must be like trying to kickbox with like one of those big riding lawnmowers that like lawn services use that have like the 3 decks with blades. And you're like, it's all coming at me. Like, and if you show any weakness, if he thinks you're starting to get tired or starting to get frustrated, like when Holloway gets into that zone, I'm not saying he's the greatest fighter of all time, but when he gets in that zone, he does stuff that just, it's Max Holloway stuff. Yeah. The last round or 2 of the Calvin Kattar fight, where all of a sudden he's just zapping Kattar with no look lefts while talking to the UFC table and like talking to his son wearing headphones cage side. The Gaethje fight, maybe the most in the zone thing I've ever seen in 20 some years of watching mixed martial arts. If this, and again, like I said about the Whitaker fight, if this gets to the end of the second round, even if Topuria's up 2 rounds to none, even if there's a 10-8 round in there somewhere, buckle up, because I think we're in for a ride. My best possible outcome of this, you know, like I'm not rooting for either guy. Like obviously it's impossible not to love Max Holloway, but even though Topuria is just like kind of being as mouthy as he possibly can, like I'm not mad at that. He's trying to sell a fight, but my perfect outcome from this would be a fight that goes into the championship rounds, and whoever wins, like we either learn something new about Topuria, like, oh shit, like you can't just outlast Topuria. He's going to be on you for 5 rounds, or we learn something. Hey, Topuria, he's still in his 20s. He's got to go back to the drawing board. He just ran into Max Holloway at the wrong time. Who knows? Maybe we'll see him again in a couple of years, but I'm going with Holloway here. And I'm going to say he picks up the decision. Like he's definitely going to go through some fire early on. I'm especially interested to see if and when Topuria turns to the ground game. Like Holloway is traditionally I mean, not that hard to take down, but really hard to deal with once he's down there. You know, like he doesn't have a ton of submissions on his record, but he likes to throw up submission attempts as a way to just keep the guy on top uncomfortable, keep them thinking about something other than ground and pounding him, looking for ways to get back up. Even if Topuria takes Holloway down early and spends time in top position, I could see it just wearing on Topuria and sapping his cardio, even though he's winning the rounds and winning the fight. Give me Holloway by decision here in just, again, one more thing to stack on the legend. Topuria will have other nights. He's not done wearing UFC belts, but give me and new and once again for Max Holloway.
I mean, this fight is absolutely incredible. I mean, I already ranted about why I think the line is off. And again, that's no disrespect to Topuria. It's just like I can't. I mean, I would be ranting the other way. It was the other way around too. Like these both guys are so amazing. I think this is the best matchup the UFC can make right now. I mean, Topuria, like, the dude is so freaking good. You know, he's so well rounded. You mentioned the dude has no weaknesses. I mean, he doesn't have many weaknesses, I should say. What really stands out to me is that he's just, like you talked about, that John Jones confidence thing. He's fighting with insane confidence, and I love that. Like, he embraced the moment against Volkanovski. Like, he was in it. He was loving it. He felt like he was built for that moment. He's a wrestle boxer that jumps in a range where he lands hard hooks. He's accurate. He sets up his shots well with feints. He loves his overhand right. He has crushing power in both hands. I mean, his KO of Jai Herbert is one of the best knockouts you'll ever see. And then, you know, he obviously he smashed Volkanovski too and knocked him out. He sets up his power shots by getting inside and working the body. He's got a lot of durability. I mean, go back to, like, the person with the most success against him was probably Jai Herbert, which is funny that fight ended in the best knockout of his career. But, you know, Jai Herbert was hitting with big shots and he never appeared to be hurt. He just kept moving forward. You know, he's got good calf kicks. He was hurting Volkanovski with calf kicks. You talk about his wrestling. He's a great wrestler, especially the Greco-Roman. Like, he's got this Greco-Roman background. He loves body lock takedowns. He's got great hip control. I mean, he suplexed Yusuf Salal, which is a fight, you know, that is starting to age well. He showed how hard he is to take down when he went against Bryce Mitchell. He's a BJJ black belt. He moves to better position on the ground, like, easily. He's a submission threat. He subbed Bryce Mitchell, which is a hell of a feat. He's very aggressive in the submission game. He loves head attacks, Darce chokes, anacondas, topside guillotines. He showed his elite grappling, like you mentioned, when he was not subbed by Ryan Hall and went right into Ryan Hall's world and dispatched some heavy ground and pound in that fight too. Max Holloway, I mean, I freaking love this dude. You know, his line that he was saying in his last fight against Justin Gaethje, he said, is like, you know,
Gladiators didn't carry around a scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's his badass line as, like, any movie. You know, like, dude, if Max Holloway was born like thousands of years ago, he would have been kicking some dude off a cliff, screaming, "This is Sparta!" You know,
Yeah.
You know, he's one of the best strikers in the history of the sport. High volume. You talked about it, the definition of a builder. Gets stronger every minute, long and lengthy. He marches down his foe, slowly just trying to take the ground. I said it before, the way he fights, he reminds me of like a general in the 1700s where they're just trying to win that land, you know, moving forward. His boxing is so good. You talked about that clip of Calvin Kattar was avoiding shots while looking away. Is one of the most amazing moments of the sport. And this guy just keep lining up the moments that he's had. It's so epic. He's great from both stances, constantly switching angles, got an incredible jab. Then he gets in the pocket and he does damage with hand speed and accuracy. I mean, the dude's super accurate. He's especially good at picking up his opponent's rhythm. If Holloway finds his range, he can't be missed. I mean, you said it good, but like the zone, he gets in that zone. It's an all-time like great. Like he gets in there, it's like when the all-time greats find and they just can't miss. It's Tom Brady in the fourth quarter and like a 2-minute drive, or Steph Curry in the fourth quarter banging 3-pointers that just like, how the hell did he just hit that shot? He did it again and again and again. And when he starts getting that rhythm and that comfortableness, it's like, oh my God, it's scary. He attacks with combinations. He has so much variety. He'll add in new attacks each fight. I love when he lands a combination and then instantly changes stance and attacks with another guy, something different on the other side. A perfect example is just how he was landing at will against Calvin Kattar. And then he just has these incredible balls where people said he wouldn't battle in the pocket. And I remember saying like, the people like, oh, Max Holloway stayed under the power of Justin Gaethje. I remember saying like, what are you talking about? Like, this is exactly what he's going to do because it's Max Holloway. And even though I had confidence in him to do that, and I remember, I think we both picked Holloway, which was a underdog then. I don't think either one of us imagined that he would stand in the pocket and put on, give us one of the most epic KOs of all time. No,
if you told me that somebody got a buzzer beater knockout in that fight, I would have put down money with Gaethje. Yeah,
absolutely. And then the balls to do it when you're ahead is crazy. I mean, he's got a great straight right. He's got a great straight left from the southpaw stance. He works the body well. He batted Allen with body shots. He's the king of just touch in and then explode him when there's an opening. He's always been this like not a one punch fight ending guy, but then he just smashed Korean Zombie with one punch and then knocked out Justin Gaethje with one punch. And we tend to think of Holloway because he's been around for so long as some like old veteran, but he started the UFC when he was so young. He's only 32 now. So he so really, I'm thinking about these like one punch knockouts and going, well, yeah, I mean, you're one of the greatest strikers of all time. You're going to have one of these 1 or 2 moments. Then I'm saying, well, maybe it's just it's a little later in your prime, but it's still the prime age. Like maybe he's just adding power now to in his prime. I mean, look at this kicking game against Arnold Allen. That's something he never really did before, and it's something he was kicking Arnold Allen's legs out. He had a spinning wheel kick against Gaethje. He's got a great chin. He is hittable because he stands tall, but he hardly ever gets hurt. I mean, Justin Gaethje was the first one to drop him, but he recovered and was right back on him. I am a little worried that he doesn't move his head enough, though. Like, it's still concerning. He's open to calf kicks. He doesn't wrestle. Like, he doesn't look the offensive wrestler, but he's a good defensive wrestler. He's very hard to take down. He loves like attacking your neck when you're going for his legs. He's got great cardio to go all 25 minutes, and he's got like tremendous heart. So if there's a war, that Max Holloway is not the guy that's going to mentally break. I mean, you think about the Poirier fights, the Volkanovski fights, the Gaethje fight. Like, the guys got the balls to stand there and challenge Justin Gaethje to like a manly manly moment. Like who's more of a man? This fight is the best fight the UFC can make. I mean, it really is. I'm so high on both guys. I think both guys will have their moments in the fight. I think Topuria is going to have the speed advantage. I think he's going to bank a round or two early. I think he might try to wrestle Holloway. And if anybody's ever been able to out-wrestle Holloway, it may be Topuria. But I don't think he has the success in the wrestling that you seem to like he might have. I don't. Like, I think Holloway's going to stuff him, or if he gets taken, he's going to pop right back up. And I think eventually Holloway's going to find his range and timing. And I think he's going to take over. I think around round 3, he picks up his first round. He starts finding a range, and as every minute goes on, he just gets better and better each round. We see the fight almost identical, other than the one little disagreement on how successful Topuria. I should say this: I wouldn't be surprised if Topuria, because of his skill set, so incredible. I just like you talk about the things, things we haven't seen before. I mean, I guess yes, Connor wrestled Max Holloway like 100 years ago, but like recently,
when they were literally like 23 and 20 years old.
Yeah. But like recently, like that's a completely different Max Holloway. Like I haven't seen anybody out wrestle him, so I'm with you, man. I think Holloway's gonna get it done. Which is why I was shocked with the betting lines. Whereas, like, I thought Holloway might be a slight underdog, but I thought it was going to be like pick 'em plus 120, something like that. So I'm with you. Give me Holloway by decision and new.
There you go. That's the kind of hard-hitting analysis and out on a limb picks that you probably tune into the Shillan and Duffy show for. This has been the
Let me say something real quick.
UFC. Yeah, of course.
So I don't know if my volume was going to mess up. Dude, we had a ton, like people don't see, like we had tons of technical issues. I had a computer crash on me during this. My battery died. Like, I'm sorry we had some technical issues that hopefully people won't know what I'm talking about, but they probably will. So I apologize ahead of time, but just disasters.
Yeah. You know what? We survive, we advance. We're veterans. We're tough. We're tough to get out of there. This has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 308, Topuria versus Holloway. I have been Ben. He has been Keith. If this is your first time checking out one of our previews, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We did a pretty brisk one this time, just because we had 14 fights to talk about. But we always try to bring you a blend of in-depth analysis and occasional historic or humorous asides that we think is pretty unique in this space. Please do like, subscribe. Neither of those things cost you a thing. They make our bosses happy. They allow us to keep bringing you this content free of charge. And drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We would love to hear your take on these fights. There were 2 unanimous upset picks out of us tonight. We tend to have a pretty good track record on those, but if you think we missed any obvious upset value, let us know. Because if you're right and we missed it, we will give you all of your flowers on the recap. Just have to join us to hear it. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after the main event. Keith takes the captain's chair. We'll talk about all 14 of these fights from the top to the bottom, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking with you. The comment section of the live chat is open that whole time, so we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Remember that this card is in Abu Dhabi, and it starts on the early side. I think it starts at like 2 or 3 o'clock Eastern time. And by all means, enjoy these fights.
Make your bed of fairy tales while you're